Book 10. Captains fight and die. Now the gates of mighty Olympus's house are flung wide open. The father of gods and king of men convenes a council high in his starry home. As throned aloft he gazes down on the earth, the Trojan camp and Latian ranks. The gods take seats in the mansion, entering there through doors to east and west, and Jove starts in. You great gods of the sky, why have you turned against your own resolve? Why do you battle so? Such warring hearts. I ordered Italy not to fight with Troy. What's this conflict flouting my command? What terror has driven one or the other side to rush to arms and rouse their enemies as swords? The right time for war will come. Don't rush it now. One day when savage Carthage will loose enormous ruin down on the Roman strongholds, breach and unleash the Alps against her walls. Then is the time to clash in hatred, then to ravage each other. Be at peace for now. Spirits high, consent to the pact I have decreed. Jove is just that brief, but golden Venus is far from brief as she replies, O Father, everlasting King over men and all the world, what other force could we implore to save us now? You see the Rutilians on the rampage? Turnus amidst them, proud in his chariot, puffed up with his new success, spurring the war lust on. Their thick armored walls no longer can shield the Trojans. Now they are even fighting inside their gates, its combat cut and thrust, right on their own ramparts, trenches bathed in blood. And Aeneas knows nothing. The man is miles away. When will you ever let them lift the siege? Once more, a new force, a new army threatens the walls of newborn Troy. Once more he springs from Arpi, that Aetolian, Diomedes. So once again I see, some wounds are in store for me, your daughter, and I must block the mortals hurling spears. If without your assent, against your will the Trojans have reached Italy, let them pay for their latest outrage. Never grant them rescue. But if they have followed the oracles laid down by the gods on high and the great shades below, how can anyone overturn your edicts now and plant the fates anew? Why recall it all? The armada burned to ash on the shores of Eryx, the storm king lashing gales from Aeolia into fury, Iris swooping down from the clouds. Now she even stirs the dead, the one realm in the world still left untested. Yes, and Alecto, suddenly loosed on earth, tears like a Aeneid through the heart of Italian cities. Empire stirs me no longer now. That was our hope while fortune still smiled. Now let those win out, the ones you want to win. If there is no patch of earth that your ruthless queen could grant the Trojans now, I beg you, Father, by the smoking wreck of Troy, let Ascanius have safe passage out of battle. Spare my grandson's life. As for Aeneas, let the man be tossed on strange new seas. Follow the course where fortune leads the way. Just give me the strength to shield my grandson. Bear him quite unscathed from the raw clash of arms. Why, I have Amethyst, Paphos' heights, and Cythera too, an Idalian mansion, there with his weapons laid away. Let him live his life out, all unsung. And so give the command for Carthage to crush Italy, overwhelm her with force. From Italy comes no barrier opposed against the towns of Tyre. What good has it been to flee the plague of war, to slip through the thick fires set by the Greeks? Drain to the lees the peril at sea, and the whole wide earth, while the Trojans hunt for Latium, hunt for Troy reborn. Better, no, to settle down on their country's dying ashes, the ground where Troy once stood? I beg you, Father, give them back their Xanthus and their Simois, if these luckless Trojans must, once more, relive the fall of Troy. At that, Queen Juno looses her fury, bursting out. Why drive me to break my deep silence, to open up my wounds, long scarred over and bruit them to the world? How could anyone, man or god, force your Aeneas to pitch on war, to harry King Latinus as his foe? So, he sought out Italy under the Fates' command, the Fates. Cassandra's raving spurred him on. Did I press him to leave his camp or cast his life to the winds? To trust his walls, the whole command of the battle to a boy? To disrupt the Tuscans' faith, inflame a peaceful people? What god, what ruthless power of mine drove him to ruin? Where's Juno in this? Or Iris sped from the clouds? So, it's wrong for Italians to ring your newborn Troy afire? For Turnus to plant his feet on his own native soil? His forebears Pilumnus, his mother goddess Venilia. What of the Trojans putting the Latins to the torch, yoking the fields of others, hauling off the plunder, taking their pick of daughters, tearing the sword bride from her husband's arms, their hands pleading for peace while they arm their sterns with spears? Oh, you can whisk Aeneas clear of the clutches of the Greeks, in place of a man puff, up some vapid fume of air. You can change an armada into sea nymphs, yes, but if we in our turn offer the Latin side a helping hand, is that such a horrid crime? Aeneas knows nothing. The man is miles away. Unknowing, let him stay there. Why, you have Paphos, Idalia, steep Cythera too. Why tamper with brute Italians, a city rife with war? Is it I who try to overwhelm from the roots up your sinking Phrygian state? Not I. Wasn't it he who exposed your wretched Trojans to the Greeks? What inspired Europe and Asia to surge up in arms, underhandedly break the bonds of friendship? Was it I who lured the Trojan adulterer on to lay Sparta low? Or I who equipped the man with weapons, fanned the flames of war with lust? You should have feared for your chosen people then. It's too late now for rising up with your groundless accusations, flinging empty slander in my face. While Juno harangued the gods with her appeals, all were murmuring low, assenting, dissenting. Low as the first stir of storm wind caught in the trees, when the rustling unseen murmur keeps on rolling, warning sailors that gales are coming on. Then the Almighty Father, power that rules the world, begins. As he speaks, the lofty house of the gods falls silent. Earth rocks to its roots. The heights of the sky are hushed, and the western breezes drop, and the ocean calms its waters into peace. So then, take what I say to heart and stamp it in your minds. Since it is not allowed that Latins and Trojans join in pacts of peace, and there is no end to your eternal clashes, now, whatever the luck of each man today, and whatever hope he follows, Trojan or Italian, I make no choice between them. Whether Italy's happy fate lays siege to the camp or the Trojans' folly, the deadly prophecies they follow. Nor do I exempt the Italians. How each man weaves his web will bring him to glory or to grief. King Jupiter is the king to all alike. The fates will find the way. And now, sealing his pledge by the river Styx, his brother's stream, by the banks that churn with pitch-black rapids, whirlpools swirling dark, he nodded his assent, and his nod made all of Mount Olympus quake. The great debate had closed. Jupiter rises up from his golden throne as the gods of heaven flock around him there and escort him to the gateway of his mansion. All day the Rutilians encircle every entry, battling on to bring their enemies down in blood and ring their walls with fire. But Aeneas' force is locked fast in its own ramparts now, no hope of a breakout. Shattered, helpless, posted high on the turrets, girding walls with a thin defensive ring, are Asius, son of Imbrasus, Timoetes, Hicetaon's son, Assaracchi twins, and Castor with aged Thymbrus, up in front. Behind them, both Sarpedon's brothers, Clarus and Thamon, new allies from Lycia's highlands. One man puts his weight into heaving up a boulder, no mean piece of a crag. Acmon, born in Lyrnessus, strong as his father Clytius, his brother Mezentius. All of them struggle there to defend their walls, some with javelins, some with rocks or flinging blazing torches, knocking arrows to bowstrings. There amidst them look the Dardan boy himself, Venus's favorite, rightly, handsome head laid bare. He shines like a brilliant gemstone set in tawny gold, adorning a head or neck, or aglow as ivory deftly inlaid in box or black Orician terebinth wood, and over his milk-white neck his long locks fall, clasped tight by a torque of hammered gold. Ismarus, you too, your fine hardy fighters watch you dipping your arrowheads in poison, winging wounds at the enemy. You, the noble son of a proud Maeonian house, where the farmhands work the loamy soil, and Pactolus floods the fields with gold. And there was Mezentius too, his glory riding high with yesterday's triumph, driving Turnus off the walls, and Capys too, whose name comes down to us in Capua, the famed Campanian town. And so both sides had clashed in the cruel, thick and fast of war, while Aeneas plowed the sea in the dead of night. Once he left Evander and entered the Tuscan camp, he seeks King Tarchon, tells him his name and stock, and the help he needs and the help he brings himself. He tells him Mezentius musters fighters to his side, tells him the heart of Turnus flares for battle, warns him of what to trust in men's affairs, concluding all with his own strong appeals. Then no delay. Tarchon joins forces at once and seals a pact, and so, free of fate's demand, since they are sworn to a foreign leader now, under the will of God, the Etruscans set sail. Aeneas' ships in the lead, with Phrygian lions fixed on her beak, Mount Ida looming aloft, a God-sent sign of home to Trojan exiles. There sits great Aeneas, musing over the shifting tides of war as Pallas flanks him closely on his left, asking now of the stars that guide them through the night, and now of the hardships he had braved on land and sea. Now throw Helicon open, muses, launch your song. What forces sail with Aeneas fresh from the Tuscan shores, manning their ships for battle, sweeping through the waves? Massicus first. He plows the sea in the bronze-sided tiger. Under him sail battalions, 1,000 men who put astern the walls of Clusium, Kose too. Their weapons, arrows, shouldering lightweight quivers, bows bristling death. Fierce Abas joins him, all his fighters shining in arms, with a brilliant gilded Apollo stationed at the stern. 600 men his motherland Populonia gave him, soldiers drilled for war, 300 more from Ilva, the blacksmith's inexhaustible island, rife with iron ore. Aeschylus III, the famous seer who bridges the worlds of gods and men, a reader of animals' entrails, stars that sweep the sky and the cries of birds, in the lightning charged with fate. 1,000 men he rushes aboard, tight ranks spiked with spears. Pisa placed them at his command, a Greek city born by the river Alpheus, bred by Tuscan soil. And following in his wake sails irresistible Astur who trusts to his horse in armor rainbow-hued. And swelling his ranks 300, all as one alert to obey his orders, men whose home is Caira, men from Minio's fields, from ancient Pyrgi and fever-racked Gravisae. Nor could I pass you by, Cunarus, staunchest in war of all Liguria's chiefs, or you with your modest band of men, Cupavo, topping your crest the swan plumes toss, a fabulous mark of your father's altered form, and all for offending you, love, you and Venus. They tell how sickness, wrung by grief for his lover, lifting a song to soothe his broken heart for Phaethon, shadowed by leafy poplars. Phaethon's sister once, sickness donned the downy white plumage of old age, left the earth behind and soared up to the stars on wings of song. And now his son, Cupavo, flanked by fighters his own age on deck, drives along under oars the giant centaur. The monster high on the figurehead makes threats to heave from aloft a massive boulder down on the waves, while the long keel cuts its furrow through the deep. Ocnus, too, heading an army come from native coasts, a son of Manto, the seer in the Tuscan river Tiber. He gave you, Mantua, walls in his mother's name, Mantua, rich in the rosters of her forebears. Not all of a single tribe, but 3 in 1, 4 clans under each, and Mantua leads them all, and the city draws her force from Tuscan blood. Mantua, source of the 500 men Mezentius goaded on to fight against himself. Mencius, son of Father Bennicus, gowned in gray-green reeds, steers down to the sea in warships built of pine. Orestes bears down too, surging on with the beat of 100 oaken oars that thrash the swells, churning the sea's clean surface into spume. He sails the massive Triton, her seahorn making the blue deep quake, and as she runs on her prow displays a shaggy man to the waist, all dragon to the tail, and under the monster's breast, part man, part beast, the foaming swells resound. So many chosen captains heading 30 warships, speeding to rescue Troy, cleft the fields of salt with beaks of bronze. By now the day had slipped from the sky and the gentle moon was riding high through the heavens at mid-career, her horses pounding through the night. As pressures gave no rest to his limbs, Aeneas sat astern, guiding the tiller, trimming sail, when suddenly, look, a troop of his comrades comes to meet him. Halfway home, the nymphs that kindly Cybele told to rule the sea in power, changing the ships to sea nymphs, swimming abreast, cutting the waves, as many as all the bronze prows birthed at anchor once. They know their king far off, circling, dancing round him, and one, most eloquent of them all, Cymodocea, swims in on his wake and grips his stern with her right hand, arching her back above the swells as her left hand rows the silent waves, and she calls out to Aeneas, lost to it all. Awake, Aeneas, son of the gods, wake up. Fling your sheets to the wind, sail free. Here we are, the pines from the sacred ridge of Ida. Now we're nymphs of the sea. We are your fleet. When traitorous Turnus forced us headlong on with sword and torch, we burst your mooring lines. We had no choice. Now we scoured the seas to find our captain. The great mother pitied us, changed our shape. She made us goddesses, yes, and so we pass our lives beneath the waves. But not your son Ascanius, trapped now by the wall and trench, in the thick of the spears, the Latins spiked for war. Already Arcadian horsemen, flanked by strong Etruscans, hold assigned positions, but Turnus is dead against their joining up with the Trojan camp. He's setting his own squadrons between their closing forces now. Up with you. Call your men to arms with the dawn. That first, then seize the indestructible shield the god of fire gave you, ringed with gold. Daybreak. If you find my urgings on the mark, we'll see vast heaps of Rutulians cut down in blood. She closed with a dive and drove the tall ship on with her right hand. How well she knew the ropes. And on it flies, faster than spear or wind-swift shaft, while the rest race on in her wake. The Trojan son of Anchises, stunned with awe, his spirits lift with a sign and scanning the skies above his head, Aeneas prays a few strong words. Ida's generous queen and mother of the gods, bind Dindoma here to your heart. By towered cities, the double team of lions yoked to your reins. Lead me in war. Bring on the omen, goddess. Speed the Trojans home with your victor's stride. No more words. As the wheeling sun swung round to the full light of day and put the dark to flight, first he commands his troops to follow orders, brace their hearts for battle, gear for war. Now Aeneas, standing high astern, no sooner catches a glimpse of his own Trojan camp than he quickly hoists his burnished, brazen shield in his left hand. The Trojans up on the ramparts shout to the skies, fresh hope ignites their rage, and wing their spears like cranes from the river Sturmon, calling out commands as they swoop through the air below the black clouds, flying before the south winds, cries raised in joy. The Rutulian king and the Latin captains marvel till, glancing back, they see an armada heading toward the shore, and the whole sea rolling down on them now in a tide of ships. From the peak of Aeneas's helmet flames are leaping forth, and a deadly blaze comes pouring from its crest. The golden boss of his shield spews streams of fire, strong as the lethal, blood-red light of comets streaming on in a clear night, or bright as the dog star, Sirius, bearing plague and thirst to afflicted mortals, rises up to shroud the sky with gloom. But dauntless Turnus never lost his faith in his daring, certain to seize the beaches first and hurl the invader off the land. Now then, here is the answer to your prayers. We'll break them all by force. The god of battle is in your hands, my men. Let each fighter think of his own wife, his home. Remember the great works, the triumphs of our fathers. Down to the shore we go to take them on. They're dazed. They've just debarked. They've got no land legs yet. Fortune speeds the bold. Urging them on, but torn, whom to lead to the shore assault, whom to trust to besiege the embattled walls. And all the while Aeneas lands his men by planks from the high sterns. Many, who watch for the ebbing waves to slip away, go vaulting into the shallows. Others row for shore. Tarchon, on the watch for a welcome stretch of beach where the shoals don't churn, no breakers booming low, but a smooth unbroken groundswell glides toward the sand, abruptly swerves his prow around and spurs his shipmates. Now, my chosen hands, you bend to your sturdy oars, lift up your prows, thrust them on, beaks plowing this enemy coast, keels cutting their own furrows. I don't flinch from a wreck in such a mooring once I've seized the land. At Tarchon's command, his shipmates rise to their oars and drive their vessels foaming onto the Latian shore until their beaks have gripped dry land. All keels beach safe and sound, all but your own ship, Tarchon. Aground on the shoals, long impaled on a jagged reef, it teeters back and forth, tiring the waves, and suddenly breaks up, flinging crews in the surf, ensnared in the shattered oars and bobbing thwarts as the heavy backwash drags their feet from shore. But Turnus wastes no time. He deploys his full force quickly against the Trojan force to fight them at the beaches. Trumpets blare. Aeneas is the first to attack the beleaguered farmers, and sign of the battle's outcome brings the Latins down, killing mighty Theron, who dared to attack Aeneas. His sword pierces the bronze mesh of Theron's tunic, stiff with its golden scales, and drains his gaping flank. Lycus next, cut live from his dead mother's womb, and hallowed to you, the healer. But what good now to elude the knife at birth? Next Aeneas, as rugged Cisseus, giant Gaius, clubbed their way through his ranks, he flung both down to death. No help to them now, the weapons of Hercules know, nor their own strong arms or their father Melampus, Hercules' mainstay, long as the earth afforded the man his grueling labors. Here's Pharis, watch, hurling his hollow threats as Aeneas hurls his javelin, stakes it square in the man's howling mouth. You too, unlucky Chiton, pursuing Clytius, your new love, his cheeks soft with the first gold down of youth. You would have gone down under the Trojan's hand and died a pitiful death. With all recall of your young boy lovers lost, if a pack of your brothers had not blocked Aeneas, 7 of Phorcys' offspring rifling 7 spears, some glancing off his shield and his helmet, harmless, others that loving Venus flicked away, just scratched his body. Aeneas cries to Achates, give me a sheaf of weapons. I won't miss a single Rutulian with my spear, just as my spears impale the Greeks at Troy. With that he seizes a heavy lance and wings it hard and straight through the bronze of Maeon's shield it pounds, ripping open his breast and breastplate both at once. His brother Alcanor runs to brace his falling brother, quick, but the spear's already flown its bloody way, stabbing his dying arm that hangs from his shoulder, dangling loose by the tendons. Another, Numitor, wrenching out the shaft from his brother's body, went at Aeneas, praying to hit him. Pay him back, but not a chance of that. He could only graze the stalwart Achates in the thigh. Now up steps Lausus from Curies, flushed with his young strength, and flings his burly spear from a distance, hitting Dryops under the chin full force to choke the Trojan's throat as he shouted, cutting off both his voice and life in the same breath. His brow slams the ground as he vomits clots of blood. 3 Thracians, too, of the north wind's lofty stock, and 3 whom their father, Idas, and fatherland Ismarus sent away to the wars, but Lausus kills them all with a novel twist of death for each. Halasus rushes in with Auruncan troops, and Messapus, Neptune's son as well, the brilliant horseman. Trojans and Latins, struggling to rout each other, seesawing back and forth as they fight it out on Italy's very doorstep, like clashing winds in the vast heavens, bursting forth into battle, matched in spirit and power, no gusts surrendering. One to another, neither the winds nor clouds nor seas, all hangs in the balance, the world gripped in a deadlock. So they clash, the Trojan armies of Latins, foot dug in against foot, man packed against man. Another zone where a torrent had hurled down boulders, heaving them far and wide and torn out trees from its banks, when Pallas saw his Arcadians untrained to attack on foot and turning tail before the Latins' pursuit. The lay of the rock-choked land convinced them all to desert their horses. So, seizing on one last way to stem disaster, now with prayers, now stinging taunts, he fires up their warlust. Where are you flying, friends? I beg you now by your self-respect, your own brave work, by your chief Evander's name, your victories won, by my own rising hopes to match my father's fame, don't trust to your feet. Hack the foe with swords, that's the way. Over there, where the massed infantry pushes forward, that's where your famous land demands you go back with Pallas in the lead. No gods force us on. We're mortals, harried by mortal enemies. They have as many hands and lives as we. Look, the ocean shuts us with immense blockades of waves. No land to fly to. What, shall we head for the sea or Troy? Fighting words, and he hurls himself at the enemy's massed ranks. First to confront him, Lausus, lured on by a harsh fate. As he tries to lift an enormous rock, Pallas rifles a spear that strikes his spine midway where it parts the ribs, and wrenches back the shaft that's wedged in the bone as his bow pounces down on him, filled with the hope to take his man off guard. But Pallas takes him first, his bow rushing in fury, off his guard, berserk with his comrade's death as Pallas welcomes him in with a naked sword he plunges into his lungs, puffed up with rage. Next he goes for Aeneas, then Camilla, sprung from Rhoetus' age-old line, a man who dared befoul his own stepmother's bed. You too, you twins, went down on Latian fields. Thymber, Larides, Daucus' sons, identical twins, an endearing puzzlement to your parents till Pallas made a strict distinction between you. Thymber, he lops off your head with one sweep of Evander's sword, and Larides chops your hand, and the fighter's dying hand gropes for its body. Quivering fingers claw for the sword once more. Inflamed by his taunts and watching his brilliant work, the Arcadians, armed with grief and shame, stand braced to meet the enemy. Suddenly Pallas runs Rhoetus through as he races past in his two-horse chariot. That much, despite in breathing room, had Ilus won, at Ilus Pallas had flung a rugged spear at long range. But Rhoetus, passing between them, takes the point head-on as he flees from you, distinguished Teuthras, you and your brother Tyres, Rhoetus spilling out of his car in death throes, drumming the fields of Italy with his heels. So as in summer, just when the winds he prayed for rise and a shepherd kindles fires scattered through the forest, suddenly all in the midst ignite into one long jagged battle line of fire, rampaging through the fields, and high on his perch he gazes down in triumph, seeing the blaze exulting on, just as your comrades' courage speeds to your rescue, all at a single point, Pallas, and joy fills your heart. But Lausus, hot for combat, charges against them now, compressing all his force behind his weapons. Lad on he birches, ferries, Demodocus, a flash of his sword, and he slices off Stromonius' hand, just as it clutched his throat. He smashes Thoas full in the face with a rock and crushes out his skull in a spray of brains and blood. Lausus' father, foreseeing his son's doom, hid him deep in the woods, but when the old man's eyes went glazing blind in death, the fates, taking the son in hand, devoted him here to Evander's lance. Pallas attacks him, praying first. Now, Father Tiber, grant the spear I'm about to hurl a lucky path through rugged Lausus' chest. I'll strip him of weapons, hang them on your oak. The Tiber heard his prayer. As Lausus guarded Imaon, the hapless fighter left his chest defenseless, bared to the Arcadian lance. But Lausus, who plays a frontline role in war, won't let his soldiers flinch at Pallas' carnage. First he finishes Abas. Quick to face him there, that burly knot, that bulwark of battle, Arcadia's prime he hacks down the Tuscans, and you, whose bodies went unscarred by the Greeks, you Trojans too. And the lines of fighters clash, matched in chiefs, in power, the rearguard packs tight, no room for maneuver, no spear hurled in the press. Here Pallas drives and lunges. Lausus opposes him, all but equal in age, remarkably handsome both, but fortune grudged them both safe passage home. Yet Jove would not allow these fighters to clash. He saved each man for his own fate, soon now, under a stronger foe. Now his loving sister, Juturna, spurs her brother Turnus quickly to Lausus' side. Turnus races his chariot straight through the ranks and shouts as he sees his comrades. Now's the time to halt your fighting. I will go after Pallas. Pallas is mine now, my prize alone. If only his father were here to watch it all in person. At that, his comrades cleared out from the field as they withdrew. Young Pallas, struck dumb by that arrogant command, runs his eyes over Turnus' enormous frame, scanning every feature from where he stood and glancing grimly. Pallas volleys back these words to counter the words his high and mighty enemy used. Now's my time to win some glory, either for stripping off a wealth of spoils or dying a noble death. My father can stand up under either fate. Enough of your threats." Enough said. Pallas marches out to the center of the field, and the blood runs cold in each Arcadian heart. Down from his chariot Turnus vaulted, nerved to attack the enemy face to face on foot. Like some lion that spots from his high lookout, far off in the plain and flexing for combat there, an immense bull, the lion plunges toward his kill, and that is the image of Turnus coming on for battle. When Pallas judged him just in range of his spear, he moved up first. If only fortune would speed his daring, pitting himself against unequal odds, and he cries out to the arching heavens, "Hercules, by my father's board, the welcome you met as a stranger, I beg you, stand by the great task I'm tackling now. May Turnus see me stripping the bloody armor off his body, bear the sight of his conqueror, eyes dulled in death." Hercules heard the young man's prayer, suppressed a groan that rose up from his heart, and wept helpless tears as the father said these tender words to his son. Each man has his day, and the time of life is brief for all, and never comes again. But to lengthen out one's fame with action, that's the work of courage. How many sons of gods went down under Troy's high wall? Why, I lost a son of my own with all the rest, Sarpedon. For Turnus, too, his own fate calls, the man has reached the end of all his days on earth. So Jove declares, and turns his glance away from the Latian fields below, where Pallas rifles his spear full force and sweeps his flashing sword from its casing sheath. The spear goes flying on, and it hits the armor high up where the bronze rims the shoulder's ridge, and glancing off, rams its way through the shield's plies, and finally scrapes the skin of Turnus's massive body. But Turnus, balancing along his oakwood spear with its iron tip, flings it at Pallas with winging words. "Now we'll see if my spear pierces deeper." And Pallas's shield, for all its layers of iron and bronze, its countless layers of oxide rounding it out for strength, still Turnus's vibrant spear goes shattering through the shield with stabbing impact, piercing the breastplate's guard in Pallas's broad chest. Pallas wrenches the spearhead warm from his wound. No use. His blood and his life breath follow hard on the same track out. Collapsing onto his wound, his armor clanging over him, Pallas dies, pounding enemy earth with his bloody mouth as Turnus trumpets over him. "You Arcadians, listen. Take a message home to Evander. Tell him this. The Pallas I send him back will serve him right. Whatever tribute a tomb can give, whatever balm a burial, I'm only too glad to give. But the welcome he gave Aeneas cost him dear." With that, he stamped his left foot on the corpse and stripped away the sword belt's massive weight, engraved with its monstrous crime. How one night, their wedding night, that troop of grooms was butchered, fouling their wedding chambers with pools of blood, all carved by Clonus, Eurytus' son, in priceless gold. Now Turnus glories in that spoil, exults to make it his. How blind men's minds to their fate and what the future holds. How blind to limits when fortune lifts men high. Yes, the time will come when Turnus would give his all to have Pallas whole, intact, when all this spoil, this very day he'll loathe. But a huge throng of friends is attending Pallas, moaning, weeping, bears him back upon his shield. "Oh, you return to your father, his great grief and glory. This day first gave you to war, and this day takes you off, and still you leave behind great heaps of Latian dead." Such a heavy blow. Now a trusted herald, no empty rumor, wings the news to Aeneas. His men stand on the razor edge of death. Now is the time to rescue his routed Trojans. The closest enemy ranks he mows down with iron, reaping a good wide swath through the Latian front, blazing with rage as his sword blade hacks that path, hunting for you, Turnus, so proud of your latest kill. As Pallas, Evander, all of them rise before Aeneas' eyes, the welcoming board that met him that first day, the right hands clasped in trust. And 4 sons of Sulmo, fighters all, and the same number reared by Uphans. Aeneas takes them alive to offer Pallas' shade and soak his flaming pyre with captive blood. And next he wings from afar, deadly spear at Magus, ducking under it, quick, as the quivering shaft flies past, and Magus, hugging Aeneas' knees, implores, I beg you now by your father's ghost, by your hopes for rising Aeolus, spare this life of mine for my father and my son. Ours is a stately mansion. Deep inside lie buried bars of ridged silver and heavy weights of gold, some of it tooled, some untooled, mine alone. Now how can a Trojan victory hinge on me? How can a single life make such a difference? Magus begged no more as Aeneas lashed back. All those bars of silver and gold you brag of, save them for your sons. Such bargaining in battle, Turnus already cut it short when he cut Pallas down. So the ghost of my father, so my son declares. And seizing Magus' helmet tight in his left hand and wrenching back his neck as the man prays on, he digs his sword blade deep down to the hilt. Hard by, the son of Haemon and priest of Phoebus and Diana, his temples wreathed in the consecrated bands, all white in robes, brilliant in his array. Aeneas confronts him, coursing him down the field and rearing over him as he stumbles, slaughters him, shrouding his brilliant robes with a mighty shade. Serestus gathers the armor, shoulders it home to you, King Mars, your trophy now. Now Cacalus, Vulcan stock, and Umbro fresh from the Marsian highlands, rally their troops as Aeneas rages on against them. His slashing sword had already hacked off Anxur's left arm, and his round buckler slammed the ground. He'd shouted some great boast, trusting his strength would match his words, probably lifting his spirits sky high and promising gray hairs for himself in a ripe old age. As Aeneas faced down Tarquitus, gloating in burnished gear and born to Faunus, god of the woods, by the wood nymph Dryope. Tarquitus blocked his path as Aeneas blazed on, and cocking back his spear he flings it and stakes the breastplate fast to the shield's groaning weight. Then as Tarquitus begs him, struggling to keep on begging, all for nothing, Aeneas dashes his head to the ground and rolling the man's warm trunk along and looming over him, vaunts with all the hatred in his heart. Now lie there, you great horrific sight. No loving mother will bury you in the ground or weight your body down with your father's tomb. You'll be abandoned now to carry on birds or plunge in the deep sea and swept away by the waves, and ravening fish will dart and lick your wounds. Plunging on he goes, overtaking their finest, Turnus' frontline troops, Antaeus, Lucas, and stalwart Numa, and Camers with tawny locks, magnanimous Vulcan's his son, the richest landholder in all Italy once, lord of Amyclae, quiet town, Aeneas like Aegeon, who, they say, had 100 arms and 100 hands, and flames blazed from his 50 maws and chests when he fought down Jupiter's bolts of lightning, clashing as many matching shields, unsheathing as many swords. So Aeneas now, rampaging in triumph all across the plain, once his sword and warmed to the slaughter. Look there, he heads for Niphaeus' car, and his 4 horses raising their chests against him. But as they see him ramping on in his loping strides and hear him groan in fury, round they wheel in terror, rearing backward, spilling their driver out the chariot, whirling it down to shore. While into the melee hurry Lucagus and his brother Liger, chariot borne by 2 white steeds, the brother reinsman guiding the team as Lucagus flaunts his naked steel. But Aeneas could not suffer their fiery charge. He charged them, looming, huge, his spear poised as Liger shouted out, What you see here are not Diomedes' team, Achilles' car, or the plains of Troy. Now on our own land you see the end of your wars, of your own life too. Such maddened words. He hurls but no words come from Aeneas now. He hurls his spear in reply against his foe, and then as Lucagus, bending into the stroke, slaps the team with his flat sword, his left foot thrust out, braced for attack. Aeneas' weapon pierces the bottom plies of his gleaming buckler, ripping into his left groin. Flung from the car, he writhes on the field in death, as righteous Aeneas sends some bitter words his way. Lucagus, no panic pair has let your chariot down, no horses shying away from an enemy's empty shade. It's you, tumbling off your chariot. You desert your team. He seized the yoke as the luckless brother, slipping off the war car, flinging his helpless arms toward Aeneas, prayed. I beg you, beg by the ones who bore a son like you, a great man of Troy. Now spare my life, pity my prayers. Praying on as Aeneas broke in. Far cry from the words you mouthed before. Die. No brother deserts a brother here. Then with his blade he carved wide open Liger's chest, his hidden cache of life. So much slaughter, the Trojan commander spreads throughout the plain, like a stream in spate or black tornado storming on till at last the young Ascanius and his troops break free and put the camp behind. The great blockade is over. At the same moment, Jove adeptly spurns on Juno. My own sister, my sweet wife as well. It's Venus, just as you thought. Your judgment never fails. She is the one who supports the Trojan forces, not their own strong hands that clutch for combat, not their unflinching spirits seasoned hard to peril. And Juno replies, her head bent low, My dearest husband, why rake my anxious heart? I dread your grim commands. Your love for me, if it held the force it once held, and should hold still, you'd never deny me this. All-powerful one, the power of spirit Turnus, clear of battle, save him all unscathed for his father, Daunus. But now, as it is, let him die and pay his debt to the Trojans. Pay with his blood, his own loyal blood. Still, Turnus takes his birth from our own breed, his name too. Pilumnus was his forebear, 4 generations back, and his lavish hand has heaped your threshold high with treasured troves of gifts. The king of lofty Olympus countered briefly. If what you want is reprieve from an instant death, some breathing space for the doomed young man, and you acknowledge the limits I lay down, then whisk your Turnus away. Pluck him out of the closing grip of fate. That much room for indulgence I will give you. But if some deeper longing for mercy stirs beneath your prayers, some notion the whole thrust of the war can shift and change, you're feeding empty hopes. Juno replies in tears, What if your heart should grant what you begrudge in words? The life of Turnus were firmly set for years to come. For now, a crushing end awaits an innocent man, unless I'm lost to the truth and swept away. Oh, if only my fears were false and I deceived. If only you have the power, would bend your will to a better goal. With that appeal, headlong down from the heights of heaven she dove, girt up in the clouds, unfurling a whirlwind through the air, and winging straight at the Trojan ranks and Latian camp. Then, out of thin mist, the goddess creates a phantom, Aeneas' double, but a strange, unearthly sight, a shadow stripped of power, and decking it out in Trojan armor, matching the shield and crest on Aeneas' godlike head. She fills it with hollow words, gives it a voice, sound without sense, and it apes his marching stride. Like ghosts that after our death, they say, will flutter on, or dreams that deceive our senses lost in sleep. But the buoyant shade parades before the front, shaking a spear in his enemy's face and taunting. Turnus attacks it, rifling a vibrant lance. A long cast, but the phantom swerves away and Turnus in turmoil, thinking Aeneas had really turned tail and fled, and drinking deep of the vapid cup of hope, cries out, Where are you racing, Aeneas? Don't abandon your sword bride. My right hand will give you the earth you crossed the seas to find. He shouts in hot pursuit, flashing his naked sword, blind to the winds that scatter all his triumph. A ship chanced to be moored to a spur-off cliff, her ladders and gangways set for action. King Aeneas sailed her here, straight from the shores of Clusium. Here, Aeneas' frightened shadow throws itself into hiding. Turnus hard on its heels, nothing can keep him back, bounding over the gangways, leaping the high decks. He had barely touched the prow when Juno bursts the cables, rips the ship from her moorings, blows her out to sea on the tide ebbing fast. And now the misty phantom, no longer hunting for cover, flutters up on high, dissolving into a dark cloud. And all the while Aeneas calls on Turnus to fight, but the man is gone. So the many men who block his way he sends to death, as Juno's winds are spinning Turnus around in mid-sea, and glancing backward, knowing nothing, no thanks for escape. He lifts his hands in prayer, his voice to the stars. Almighty Father, so, you find my guilt so great? You're dead set on my paying such a price? Where have I come from? Where am I racing now? What is this flight that takes me home? A coward. Will I ever see my Laurentine walls in camp again? What of those gallant men who backed my sword and me? All of them, what a disgrace. I deserted them all to die, an unspeakable death. Now I see them straggling, lost. I hear them groaning as they go under. What shall I do? If only the earth gaped deep enough to take me down. Better, pity me, winds. Turnus begs you with all his heart. Dash this ship on a reef or cliff, or run her aground on the Syrtes' savage shoals where no Rutulian, no rumor that knows my shame can dog my heels. Praying, his mind at sea, wavering here, there, crazed by his own disgrace. Should he fling himself on his sword and thrust the ruthless blade through his ribs, or plunge in the heavy swells and swim back to the bay and pitch himself at the Trojan spears once more? 3 times he approached each way. 3 times Juno, with all her power, held the prince's fury down, pitying him in her heart, and kept him hard on course, cutting the deep as favoring tide and current sweep him home to his father Adonis' ancient city. But now Mezentius' turn. That moment at Jove's command, he carries on the fight, attacks the victorious Trojans, true, but his own Tuscan troops, with all their hate and showering weapons, rush to attack him quite alone, their one and only target. He, like a headland jutting into the ocean wastes and bared to the winds' rage, braving the breakers, weathering out all force and fury of sea and sky, stands firm himself. He hacks the ground, Dolichaon's son, Hebrus, Latagus with him, and Pallas, who spins and runs. He smashes Latagus square in the face and mouth with a crag of rock, and cuts the knees from under the racing Pallas, leaving him slowly writhing in pain, and gives his armor to Lausus, bronze for his shoulders, plumes to crown his crest. The next to die, Euanthes, the Phrygian, Mimas too, a comrade of Paris just his age. On the same night, Theano brought into light the son of Amycus. Hecuba, great with a torch, bore Paris. Paris lies dead in the city of his fathers. Mimas lies unsung on the Latian shores. Mezentius. Picture the wild boar that's harried down from a ridge by snapping packs of hounds. Some beast Mount Vesulus shielded for long, or along the Latian forests fed on the reeds that crowd their marshes. Once stampeded into the nets, he jolts to a halt, snorts, at bay. The hackles rising up on his neck, no hunter bold enough to approach him, take him on. At a safe remove, they attack with spears and shouts. But the boar stands fast, unflinching, where to charge. Anywhere, grinding his tusks and shaking spears from his back. So Mezentius now, for all his attackers is rightful fury. None of them has the spine to fight him, swords drawn. They just bait him with missiles, far-flung cries, all to safe remove. Now Acron, a Greek, had just arrived from Corythus' old frontier, an exile, leaving his marriage in the lurch. As Mezentius spied him routing the lines far off, crested in purple plumes, the blue of his bride-to-be, like a famished lion, stalking the cattle pens for prey, for the hunger will often drive him mad. Just let him spot some goat on the run or a stag's antlers branching high. His big jaws gape at the sport, his mane bristles, then a pouncing assault, and he clenches his quarry's flesh as the sopping gore soaks his ruthless maw. Just so Mezentius pounces hotly onto the enemy masses. He lays unlucky Acron low, his heels pounding the dark earth as he gasps his life away and dies, the weapon splintered off and his body blood red. Eurides darts away, but Mezentius would not stoop to killing him on the run with a spear cast from behind. Stabbing him, unseen, no. He dueled him man to man, proving himself the better man by force of arms, not stealth. Next, stamping his foot on the corpse and leaning hard on the spear, Mezentius shouts out, "Here, men, lies no mean part of their battle strength, Eurides once so tall." And his comrades shout back, redoubling the victor's cry as Eurides pants his last. "You don't have long to crow, whoever you are, my victor. Vengeance waits. The same fate watches over you too. You'll lie here in the same field very soon." "Die now," Mezentius cries, grinning through his rage. "As for my own death, the father of gods and king of men will see to that." Mezentius, vaunting, pries the spear from Eurides' body. Grim repose and an iron sleep press down his eyes and seal their light in a night that never ends. Caedicus chops Alcathous down. Sacrator, Hydaspes, Rapo kills Parthenius. Then the indestructible Orses. Messapus levels Clonius. Then Lycaon's son, Eurycades, one thrown from a reinless horse and sprawled aground, the other fighting on foot. On foot a Lycian too. One Agus strode up now, but Valorous, no poor heir to his father's battle prowess, hurled him down as Thronius fell to Salius. Salius to Nailses. Crack marksmen, with spears and arrows both, blindsiding in front afar. Ruthless Mars was drawing the battle out, dead even now, equaling out the grief, the mutual slaughter. Victors and victims killed in turn, both sides locked, not a thought of flight, not here. The gods in the halls of Jove are filled with pity, feeling the feudal rage of both great armies, mourning the labors borne by mortal men. Here Venus, over against her, Juno gazing down, as Tisiphone seethes amid the milling thousands, that livid, lethal fury. But here Mezentius comes, brandishing high his massive spear and storming on like a whirlwind down the plain, and enormous as Orion, marching in mid-sea, plowing a path through the deep swells, his shoulders rearing over the waves, or hauling down from a ridge the trunk of an age-old mountain ash. As he treads the ground, he hides his head in clouds. So vast, Mezentius marching on in gigantic armor. Aeneas, spotting him out in the long front ranks, comes up to cross his path, but he holds firm, unafraid, awaiting his great-hearted foe, stands firm in all his mass. His eyes narrow, gauging the length his spear will need, he cries, "Let this right arm, my only god, and the spear I hurl be with me now. I dedicate you, Lausus, decked in the spoils I stripped from that pirate's corpse, my son, my living trophy over Aeneas." Enough. He hurled his spear and whizzing in from a distance, winging on, it ricocheted off Aeneas' shield to hit that hardy fighter, Antares, yards away, between the flank and groin. Antares sent from Argos, Hercules' aide, who bound himself to Evander, settling down in the king's Italian city. Laid low by a wound, aimed for another. Luckless man, he looks up at the heavens, longing for his dear Argos as he dies. Next, the grave Aeneas flings a spear at Mezentius, right through the buckler's 3 round plates of bronze, through the linen plies and bull's hide triply stitched, the spear pierced, plunging deep in the man's groin. But its force stopped short of home. In a flash, Aeneas, overjoyed now at the sight of the Tuscan's blood, sweeps his sword from its sheath and closes fast on his staggered foe. But Lausus, seeing it all, groaned low with the love he bore his father. Tears poured down his face, and now, Lausus, your fated, brutal death and your brave deeds, if glorious work long ages old can win belief. Neither your record nor yourself will I ever fail to sing. Young soldier, you deserve our praise. Now, his father was backing off, defenseless, weighed down, dragging his enemy's spear shaft trailing from his shield. So the son sprang forward, darting into the moil, and just as Aeneas rose up, his arm reared for attack. Lausus, ducking under the stroke, parried the sword, holding the Trojan off while shouting comrades harried Aeneas with missiles pelting in from afar, till under his son's shield the father could escape. Aeneas keeps down, huddling under his own shield, enraged. Think of a cloudburst bearing down with gusts of hail, and every plowman, every farmhand quits the fields, and the traveler keeps safe in a welcome refuge, under some river's banks or cavern's rocky arch, while rain pelts the earth. So when the sun returns, they can all get on with the day's work. So Aeneas, overpowered by missiles left and right, raves out the cloudburst of war till its thunder dies away. Then he taunts Lausus, threatens Lausus. Why hurry your death, daring beyond your powers? Your love for your father lures you into folly. But Lausus rages on. Berserk as a savage fury surges higher now in the Trojan captain's heart. The fates bind up the last threads of Lausus' life as Aeneas drives his tempered sword through the youth, plunging it home hilt deep. The point impaled his shield, a flimsy defense for the youngster's brash threats, and the shirt his mother wove him of soft gold mesh in his lap filled up with blood. And then his life slipped through the air, sorrowing down to the shades, and left his corpse behind. Ah, but then, when the son of Anchises saw his dying look, his face, that face so ashen, awesome in death, he groaned from his depths in pity, reached out his hand as this picture of love for a father pierced his heart, and said, "Forlorn young soldier, what can Aeneas, in all honor, give you to match your glory now? What gifts are worthy of such a noble spirit? Keep your armor that gives you so much joy. I give you back to your fathers as ash and shades if it offers any solace. And this, at least, may comfort you for a death so cruel, unlucky boy. You went down under the hand of great Aeneas." With that, he rounded hard on Lausus' comrades, slow to move, lifted their captain's body off the ground where Lausus was defiling his braided hair with blood. But Lausus' father was just staunching his wounds in the Tiber's waters, leaning his body against a tree trunk, resting now. Nearby, his brazen helmet swings from a branch, and his heavy armor lies on the grass in peace. Picked young soldiers stand in a ring around him, his combed, flowing beard spreading across his chest. He tries to limber his neck, panting, heaving in torment. Time and again he asks for news of Lausus. Again he dispatches runners to recall him, bearing a stricken father's orders. Yes, but Lausus, weeping comrades are bearing his lifeless body home on his shield, a great soldier taken down by a great wound. But his father hears their wails far off, and stirred by a grim foreboding, knows it all. Soiling his gray hair with dust, flinging both hands to the skies, he clings to his son's body, crying, "Was I so seized by the lust for life, my son? I let you take my place before the enemy's sword, my own flesh and blood. What, your father saved by your own wounds? Kept alive by your death? Oh, now at last I know the griefs of exile, I and all my pain. At last the wound strikes home. I've stained your name, my son, with my own crimes. Detested, drummed from my fathers a scepter and their throne. I owed a price to my land and people who despise me. If only I'd paid in full with my own guilty life, by any death on earth. But I live on, not yet have I left the land of men and light of day, but I will leave it all." In the same breath he struggles to stand erect on his damaged thigh, and though his strength is sapped by his deep wound, his spirit is unbroken. He calls for his horse, his pride, his mainstay, always the mount he rode, triumphant from every battle. Seeing it grieving, he begins, "Long have we lived together, Rebus, if anything in this mortal world lives long. Today, either you'll carry back those bloody arms we strip in triumph, parade Aeneas' head and avenge together Lausus' pains, or if no force can clear our path, you will go down with me, for I can't believe, my brave one, you could bend to a stranger's orders, bear a Trojan master." Mezentius mounted up, his weight settling onto the horse's back in the old familiar way, both hands holding the heft of well-honed spears, his helmet aflash with bronze and bristling horsehair crest, and into the surge of battle so he plunged, churning with mighty shame, with grief and madness all aswirl in that one fighting heart. 3 times he shouted out to Aeneas, a great resounding shout, and Aeneas knew that voice, and his prayer rose up in joy. "So grant it, Father of gods and high Apollo, bring the battle on." That challenge made, he closes on his enemy, spear poised for the kill as Mezentius answers back, "Why, you king of cruelty, now that you've killed my son, why try to make me cringe? That was the only way you could destroy me. I never flinch at death or bow to a single god. No more words, I'm here to die, but I bring you these gifts first." And with that he flung a javelin at his enemy, planting one shaft after another, racing round in a sweeping ring, but the golden boss of Aeneas' shield stands fast. 3 times Mezentius rides around him, hurling his weapons, keeping the Trojan on his left. 3 times Aeneas wheels round with him, bearing a grisly thicket of lances bristling on his shield. Then, tired of all delays, of ripping out the shafts, outmatched on the defensive, Aeneas now at last, at his wit's end, bursts forth and hurls his spear, and it splits the temples of Mezentius' warhorse. Back it rears, flailing the air with flying hoofs, and throwing its rider, pitching headlong down in its tangled mass, its shoulder torn out. It crushes Mezentius' body to the ground. Trojan and Latin war cries set the sky on fire as Aeneas dashes up and, wrenching his sword from its sheath, he triumphs over him. Where's the fierce Mezentius now? Where's his murderous fury? And the Tuscan fighter, gazing up at the sky and drinking in the air as he returned to his senses, said, "My mortal enemy, why do you ridicule me, threaten me with death? Killing is no crime. I never engaged in combat on such terms. No such pact did Lausus seal between you and me that you would spare my life. One thing is all I ask. If the vanquished may ask a favor of the victor, let my body be covered by the earth. Too well I know how my people's savage hatred swirls around me. Shield me, I implore you, from their fury. Let me rest in the grave beside my son, in the comradeship of death." With those words, full aware, he offers up his throat to the sword, and across his armor pours his life in waves of blood. Book 11. Camilla's Finest Hour. Now as dawn rose up and left her ocean bed, Aeneas, moved as he is by grief, to pause and bury comrades, desolate with their deaths. Still the victor pays his vows to the gods as first light breaks. An enormous oak, its branches lopped and trunk laid bare, he stakes on a mound and decks with the burnished arms he stripped from Mezentius, that strong captain, a trophy to you, Mars, the great god of war. Aeneas fixes the crest, still dripping blood, the enemy's splintered spears and breastplate battered hard and pierced in a dozen places. Fast to the left hand he straps the brazen shield, and down from the neck he hangs the ivory-hilted sword. Then he turns to his comrades, bands of officers pressing round him there, and Aeneas starts in to stir their spirits flushed with recent triumph. What magnificent things we've done, my friends. Dismiss all fears for what's still left to do. These are the spoils stripped from a proud king, our first fruits of battle. This is Mezentius, the work of my right hand. Now on we go to the Latian king, his city walls. Sharpen your swords with heart and pin your hopes on war. No taking us off guard, no hanging back, no dread must cripple our steps with an anxious second thoughts when the gods allow us to pull our standards up, strike camp, and move the army out. But now commit our friends' unburied bodies to the earth, their only tribute down in the depths of hell. Go, he cries. Deck with funeral gifts those heroes' souls. They won this land for us with their own blood. But first send Pallas home to Evander's grieving city, a soldier who never lost heart when the black day swept him off and drowned him in bitter death. So Aeneas says in tears, turning back to his gates where Pallas' lifeless body lay outspread, guarded by old Acoetes. He bore Evander's arms in Arcadia once, but the omens were less bright when he marched out with Pallas, beloved foster son. Around them flocked a retinue, crowds of Trojans and Trojan women, their hair unbound in the mourners' way. But then, as soon as Aeneas entered the high-built gates, they beat their breasts and raised their cries to the sky, and the royal lodging groaned with wails of grief. Aeneas, gazing at Pallas resting there, his head, his face bled white, and his smooth chest splayed apart by a Latin spear, the tears came welling up with words of sorrow. Child of heartbreak, was it you whom fortune denied me, coming to me all smiles? Now you will never live to see our kingdom born, never ride in triumph home to your father's house. A far cry from the pledge I made Evander for his son. Embracing me as I left that day, he sent me out to win ourselves an empire, fearful, warning that we would face brave men, a battle-hardened people. So even now, gripped by his own empty hopes, he may be paying his vows, perhaps, loading the altars down with gifts, while we, with shows of grief and hollow tributes, bring him a lifeless son who owes no more, now, to any god on high. Unlucky man, you must behold the agonizing burial of your son. Is this how we return? Our longing for triumph? Is this my binding pledge? Ah, but Evander, you'll never see him retreat, hit by a shameful wound. Never pray for a father's wretched death, disgraced by a son who still lives safely on. O Italy, oh, what a rugged bastion you have lost. How great your loss, my Aeolus. Mourning done, he commands his troops to lift the stricken body high and sends 1,000 men, picked from the whole corps, to escort the rites and join in the father's tears. A small comfort offered a grief so great but owed to a father's heartache. Others lost no time, braiding with wicker work a soft, pliant bier, weaving shoots of arbutus, sprigs of oak, shrouding the piled couch with shady leaves. Here on his raised rustic bed they place the boy, and there he lies like a flower cut by a young girl's hand, some tender violet bloom, or drooping hyacinth spray, its glow and its lovely glory still not gone, though Mother Earth no longer nurses it now or gives it life. Then Aeneas carried out twin robes, stiff with purple and gold braid, that Dido of Sidon made with her own hands once, just for Aeneas, loving every stitch of the work, weaving into the weft a glinting mesh of gold. Heartsick, he cloaks the boy with one as a final tribute, covering locks that soon will face the fire. Then, heaping a mass of plunder seized in the Latin rout, Aeneas orders it borne home in a long cordage, adding the steeds and arms he stripped from foes. Behind their backs he strapped their hands, the captives he planned to send below as gifts to appease the shades, sprinkling Latin blood on the pyre that burned their corpses. He orders his own captains to carry tree trunks clad in enemy arms, with the hated names engraved. Unlucky old Acoetes, weighed down with the years, they help along as he beats his chest with fists, claws his cheeks with his nails, and stumbling on, flings his full length to the ground. Chariots too are rolled along, splashed to the rails with Latin blood. And here comes Pallas, his warhorse, Blaze, regalia set aside, weeping, ambling on, big tears rivering down his face, and others bear the spear and helmet of Pallas. Turnus, the victor, commandeered the rest. There follows an army of mourners, Trojans all, and all the Tuscans. All the Arcadians march with arms reversed, after the long cordage of Pallas' friends had moved on well ahead. Aeneas drew to a halt, groaned from his depths, and spoke these last words. The same dark fate of battle commands me back to other tears. Hail forever, our great Pallas. Hail forever, and farewell. Aeneas said no more. Back he strode to his ramparts, back to camp. Now in came envoys sent from the Latin city, bearing olive branches and pleading for a truce. Those bodies felled by the sword and strewn about the field, return them, let them lie with mounds of earth for cover. There is no fighting defeated men, robbed of the light. Spare them now. You called them your hosts once, and the fathers of your brides. Good Aeneas grants the appeal he'd never shun. He treats them kindly and adds these gracious words. What unmerited stroke of fortune, men of Latium, traps you so in war that you flee from us, your friends? Peace for the dead, cut down by the lots of battle, that's your plea? I'd grant that to the living too. I'd never have come if fate had not ordained me here, a house and home. Nor do I make war with your people. It's your king, who renounced our pact of friendship, choosing to trust to Turnus' force of arms. Why, it would have been fairer for Turnus to meet his death. If the soldier means to finish off our war by force, to rout the Trojans now, he should have clashed with me and my weapon then, in combat man to man. One of us would have lived, the one whom Mars, or his own right arm, had granted life. Go now, ignite the pyre beneath your luckless dead. Aeneas closed. They all stood silent, trading startled glances fixed on each other, hushed. Then aged Drances, always quick to attack the young captain Turnus, full of hatred and accusations, breaks forth to have his say. Man of Troy, great in fame, greater in battle, how can I sing your praises to the skies? What to commend first? Your sense of justice, your awesome works of war? Surely we'll carry back to our walls these words of yours with grateful hearts. And if fortune points the way, ally you with our king, Latinus. Turnus can find his allies for himself. We'll even be glad to raise your mighty walls ordained by fate, glad to shoulder up the foundation stones of Troy. All is one. His comrades murmured yes to Drances' offer. Now for a dozen days they made their truce, and peace intervening, Trojans and Latins mingled safely, ranging the woods and mountain ridges side by side, and soaring ash trees ring to the two-edged iron axe, and they bring down pines that towered toward the skies. There is no pause in the work as the wedges split the oak and fragrant cedar. The groaning wagons haul down from the slopes huge, rowan trunks. Rumor, already in flight with the first alarms of sorrow, fills Evander's ears, Evander's walls and palace. Rumor that had just trumpeted Pallas' Latian triumph. Arcadians throng to gateways, grasping funeral brands in the old archaic way. and the torches light the road, steering a long line through flatlands far and wide. Joining forces with them, the Trojan escorts massed to form a growing column of mourners on the march. Once Arcadia's mothers saw them nearing their homes, their wailing set the walls on fire with grief. And no force in the world can stop Evander now. Into the crowds he goes, and as the bier is lowered, throws himself on Pallas, clinging for dear life, sobbing, groaning, his sorrow all but choking his voice that thrusts a passage through at last. Far cry from the pledge you made your father, Pallas, that you would do nothing rash the day you trusted yourself to the savage god of war. How well I knew the thrill of a boy's first glory in arms, the heady sweetness of one's first fame in battle. But how bitter the first fruits of a man's youth, the hard lessons learned in a war so near at hand, and none of the gods would hear my vows, my prayers. And you, my wife, most blessed woman in all the world, how lucky you were to die, spared this wrenching grief. But I defeated fate, a father doomed to outlive his son. If only I'd joined ranks with our Trojan comrades here, and Latin spears had hurled me down. And I had given my own life, and the long last march brought me, not Pallas, home. Not that I blame you, Trojans, nor our pacts, our friendships sealed by handclasp. No, this fate was assigned to me in my old age. But if my son was doomed to an early death, to know he died after killing Volscian hordes, and died as he led the Trojans into Latium, that will be my joy. Nor do I think you merit any other burial rites than good Aeneas grants, and the Trojan heroes, Tuscan chiefs as well, and Tuscan armies, bearing your great trophies stripped from the men your right arm killed in war. And you too, Turnus, would now be standing here, a tremendous trunk of oak, decked out in armor if Pallas had your years and strength to match. But why in my torment hold the Trojans back from battle? Go, take this word to your king. Remember it well. The reason I linger out this life I loathe, Aeneas, now Pallas is dead and gone, is your right arm that owes, as you well know, the life of Turnus to son and father both. That is the only field left free to you now, to prove your worth and fortune. I look for no joy in life. The gods have ruled that out, just to bear the news to my son among the dead. Soon the dawn had raised her light that gives men life, wretched men, calling them back to labor in mortal struggle. Now Captain Aeneas, now Tarchon erected pyres along the sweeping shore, and here they carried the bodies of their dead in the old ancestral way, as the dark funeral fires blazed up from below to shroud the high skies in pitch-dark smoke. 3 times they ran their ritual rounds about the burning pyres, armed in gleaming bronze. 3 times they rode on horseback, circling the fires lit in mourning, lifting their wails of sorrow. Tears wet the earth, tears wetting their armor, the shouting of fighters' swords, the clashing blare of trumpets. Some heave on the flames the plunder stripped from the Latin ranks they killed, their helmets, burnished swords, bridles, chariot wheels still glowing hot, while others burned the offerings well known to the dead, their shields, their spears that had no luck. And round about they slaughtered droves of cattle, carcasses offered up to death, and bristling swine and beasts led in from the fields are butchered over the flames. Then down the entire shore they watch their comrades burn, as men stand guard at the pyres now dying out. Nor can they tear themselves away till the dank night comes, wheeling around the heavens, studded with fiery stars. No less in another zone the grieving Latins raise up countless pyres too, for they had many dead, and some they bury in earth, some they lift and bear off to the nearby fields, and the other dead they carry back to town. All the rest they burn, unnumbered and unsung. An enormous tangled mass of bloody carnage waits, and the wasteland far and wide lights up with fires, with pyre on pyre, striving to outblaze the last. The 3rd day rose, driving the night's chill from the sky, as the mourners raked the embers, leveling off the ashes mixed with bones, and piled the gravesite high with mounds of earth still warm. Now in the homes, in King Latinus' city that overflowed with wealth, the breaking wails and the long dirges reached their climax. Here the mothers and grief-stricken brides of the dead, and their loving sisters, hearts torn with sorrow, and young boys robbed of their fathers. Curse this horrendous war and Turnus' marriage. He himself, they cry, he should decide it all with his own sword and shield, since he lays claim to the realm of Italy, claims the lion's share of honor for himself. Encaustic Drances led weight to their side. He swears that Turnus alone is summoned. He alone called forth to battle. But opposing them at once, a mix of views and voices rises up for Turnus. The famous name of the queen holds out its shield, and the hero wins support for his many feats, his trophies won in war. Now amid the din, as the fiery controversy flared, look, to top it off, the grim-set envoys enter, bearing the news from Diomedes' noble city. Nothing has been won, for all our attempts, nothing achieved by all our gifts, our gold, our fervent appeals. We Latins must look elsewhere, hunt for other allies or press for peace at once at the hands of the Trojan king. Crushing news. Even King Latinus is overwhelmed. It's clear. Aeneas comes by the will of fate, the word on high. So the wrath of the gods declares the fresh dug graves before Latinus' eyes. And so he convenes a council, all the leading captains mustered at his command, inside the lofty gates. They all collected now, crowding into the royal halls through milling streets. Throned in their midst, greatest in years and first in power, sits Latinus, the king's brow hardly marked by joy. He orders the envoys home from Aetolia's city to tell all the reports they carry back, demanding the truth from each man in turn. A hush fell as Venulus, following orders, tells his story. My countrymen, we have seen Diomedes, seen the Argive camp. We've made the long march and survived its many dangers. We have grasped the hand that toppled Troy. The victor king was still building his city. Agrippa, named for his father's Argive stock, in Aapyx's realm, the fields round Mount Garganus. Once we entered, allowed to appeal before the king, we offered our gifts, told him our names, our native land, and who had attacked us, what had drawn us to Arpi. He heard our pleas and replied with calming words. You happy, happy people, men of old Ausania, land where Saturn ruled, what drives you now to shatter your blessed peace? What spurs you to rouse the hells of war you've never known? We who defiled the fields of Troy with swords, why mention all the pain we drank to the dregs, fighting beneath those walls, or the men we lost, drowned in Simois River? Strewn across the world, we all have borne unspeakable punishments, yes. We've paid the price in full for all our crimes. Even Priam mighty pity our embattled troops. The grim star of Minerva, she bears witness. So do Euboea's crags and Caphareus' vengeful cliffs. Caught in that war's wake, we have been driven to many shores. Atreus' son, Menelaus, right up to the pillars of Proteus, long in exile now. Ulysses has seen the Cyclops on Mount Etna. Shall I tell you of Neoptolemus' brief reign? The house of Idomeneus tumbled to the ground. The Locrians stranded out on Libya's coast. Even he, the Mycenaean commander of all Greece, the moment he crossed his threshold, down he went at the hands of his wicked queen, the conqueror of Asia. An adulterer crouched in wait to lay him low. Just think, the envious gods denied me my return to my father's altars, or one glimpse of the wife I yearn for so, or the lovely hills of Caledon. I'm still stalked by the sight of terrifying omens. My comrades gone, flown off to the sky on wings, or they roam the streams as birds. How brutal, the punishments all my people have endured, and they make the cliffs re-echo with their cries. Such disasters were in the stars, from that day on that I, like a maniac, attacked an immortal's body. My sword defiled the hand of Venus with a wound. No, don't press me to face such battles now. I've had no strife with Trojans since Troy fell, nor do I think of those old griefs with any joy. And as for the gifts you bring me from your homeland, give them to Aeneas. I've stood up against his weapons, we've gone man to man. Trust me, I know just how fiercely the fighter rises up behind his shield, what a whirlwind rides on that man's spear. If Troy had borne 2 others to match Aeneas, Trojan troops would have marched on Greece's cities. Greece would now be grieving, fate turned upside down. Whatever the standoff around the sturdy walls of Troy, with Greek victory hanging fire until the 10th year came, was all thanks to Aeneas and Hector's strong right arms. Both men shone in courage. Both men blazed in combat. Aeneas the more devout. Join hands in pacts of peace while you still have the chance. Don't join battle, sword to sword. Be on your guard. Now then, you have heard, great king, the king's response, the views he takes of this mighty war of ours. The envoys had barely closed when a troubled groan came murmuring from the Italians' anxious lips, and mounted as when the rocks resist the stream in spate, and the dammed up tide goes churning, sounding out as it beats from bank to bank, with water roaring white. Once their spirits calmed and the anxious din died down, first the king salutes the gods from his high throne, and then begins. If only before now, men of Latium, we had resolved this dire crisis. How I wish we had called a council then. Far better then, not now, with the enemy camped before our walls. What an ominous war we wage, my countrymen. Fighting people descended from the gods, unbeaten heroes, never wearied in battle. Even in defeat they can't put down the sword. If you had any hope of winning Aetolian allies, give it up now. Each man to his own best hope, but now you can see how slim your hopes have been. The rest of your prospects, all lie in shambles. Look with your own eyes. Feel with your own hands. I blame no one. The most that valor could do, valor has done. We have fought the good fight with all our kingdom's power. Now, at this point, torn as I am with doubts, here's what I propose. I will tell it in brief. Come, listen closely. I have an age-old tract along the Tiber River, stretching west, beyond the Sicanian border. Here the Euruncans and Rutulians sow their crops, plow the rugged hills, and graze the wildest banks. Let this entire spread, plus highlands ringed with pines, be given the Trojans now to win their friendship. And let us draft a treaty, just in every term, and invite the Trojans in to share our kingdom. Let them settle here, if so their hearts desire, and build their city walls. But if they are bent on seizing other countries, other people now, and it's in their power to put our land astern, then we'll build them 20 ships of Italian oak, more if they have the crews. The timbers stacked ashore. Let them set out the number, the class of ship they need. We can supply the bronze, the shipwrights, docks, and tackle. I also propose, to bear the news, confirm the pact, that 100 envoys be dispatched, elite Italian stock, their arms laden with bows of peace and bearing gifts, 100 weights of gold and ivory, throne and robe. Our royal emblems, confer among yourselves, shore up our shattered fortunes. Drances rises, aggressive as always, stung by Turnus' glory. Spurred by smarting, barely hidden envy, a lavish spender, his rhetoric even looser, but a frozen hand in battle. No small voice in the public councils, always a shrewd adviser, a power in party strife. On his mother's side, well-born, but his father's side remains a blank. Drances rises now, his urgings fuel their fire. Our situation is clear for all to see, and it needs no voice of ours in council now, my noble king. The people know. They admit they know what destiny has in store, but they flinch from speaking out. Let him allow us to speak and quit his puffed-up pride, that man whose unholy leadership and twisted ways. Oh, I'll let loose, he can threaten me with death. So many leading lights among us he snuffed out, that we see with our entire city plunged in grief while he, trusting that he can break and run, attacks the Trojans, terrorizing the heavens with his spears. Just add one gift to the hordes you tell us now to give and pledge the Dardans. Just one more, my generous king. Let no one's violence overwhelm your power here as a father to give his daughter to a man, an outstanding man, a marriage earned in full and sealed by pacts of peace that last forever. But if such terror grips our hearts and minds, let us beg a favor of our fine prince. Turnus, surrender to king and country their due rights. Why keep flinging your wretched people into naked peril? You are the root and spring of all the Latins' griefs. There's no salvation in war. Peace, we all beg you, Turnus, bound with the one inviolate pledge of peace. I've come first, the man you think your enemy, and what if I am? I'm here to implore you now, pity your own people. Surrender your pride. You're beaten, now retreat. Routed so, we have seen our fill of death. Vast tracts we have left a wasteland. Or if glory spurs you on, if your strength is still like oak, if the dowry of a palace seems so very dear to your heart, courage. Chest out, meet your enemy head on. But of course, so Turnus can fetch his royal bride, our lives are cheap, scattered in piles across the field, unburied and unwept. Come, prince, if you have the spine, if you have any spark of your father's warring spirit, look, your challenger calls you out to fight. Turnus groans under that barrage, his fury breaks into fire, and the outrage bursts from the soldier's deep heart. Always a mighty flood of words with you, Drances, when battle demands our fighting hands. Whenever the Senate's called, you're the first to show your face. But there is no earthly need to fill these halls with the talk that flies so bravely from your mouth, safe as you are while the ramparts keep the enemy out and the trenches still don't overflow with blood. So, bluster away with your bombast, that's your style. Brand me for cowardice, Drances, once your arm has left as many piles of slaughtered Trojans, decked as many fields with brilliant trophies. Now we're free to see what courage and quickness can achieve. No long hunt for the foe. As you may have noticed, they camp around our walls on every side. Come, shall we march against them? You hang back. Why? Will your warlust always lie in your windy words and your craven, racing feet? Beaten, am I? Who could rightly call me beaten? You swine, who bothers to see the Tiber crest with Trojan blood and Evander's house uprooted, razed to the earth, and all his Arcadian fighters stripped of arms? That's hardly the man that Pandarus and Bitias met when those two giants confronted me, and the 1,000 men whom I, in a single day, sent down to hell in all my triumph, trapped as I was inside the enemy's rugged walls. So, there's no salvation in war, you say? Go sing that song, you fool, for the Trojan chief. Your own prospects, too. Keep on striking your huge panic on all our hearts, praising to high heaven the strength of a people beaten twice, disdaining the forces of Latinus. Now, I suppose, the Myrmidon captains cringe before the Phrygian armies, now Diomedes, now Larician Achilles, and Aufidus' rapids rush back from the Adriatic's waves. But here's Drances, feigning terror at my rebukes, a scoundrel's shabby dodge, just to hone his charges hurled against me. You'll never lose your life such as it is, not by my right hand, fear not. Just let it rest, beating inside that coward's chest of yours. But now, Father, I come back to you and your resolves. If you no longer harbor any hope for our armies, if we are so alone, and at one repulse our forces are totally overwhelmed, good fortune's lost forever, let us reach out to our helpless arms and plead for peace. Oh, if only we had a shred of our old courage left. I rate that man the luckiest one among us, first in the work of war, first in strength of heart, who spurning the sight of our surrender falls, dying, and bites the dust for one last time. But if we have troops and provisions still intact and the towns and men of Italy still support our side, the Trojans have also paid a bloody price for glory. They have their burials too. The same storm struck us both. Then why this shameful collapse before it all begins? Why tremble so before the trumpet blares? Many things the run of the days and shifting works of fickle time have turned from bad to good. Many men has two-faced fortune cheated, only to come back and set them up on solid ground once more. Diomedes, true, and his city Arpi will offer us no relief. But Messapus will, I trust, Telamnius will, that soldier of fortune, and all the captains sent by so many lands. And no small glory waits for the men picked out from Latian and Laurentine fields. And Camilla, too, our ally sprung from Volscian stock, heading her horsemen, squadrons gleaming bronze. But if the Trojans call me to single combat, if that's your will as well, and I am such a bar to the public good, then victory has not spurned or so hated these hands of mine that I would shrink from any risk when hopes are riding high. I will take him on with a will. Let him outfight the great Achilles, strap on armor the match for his, forged by Vulcan's hands. Bring him on, I say. To all, to Latinus, the father of my bride, I, Turnus, second in fighting strength to none of the men who came before me, I devote my life. Aeneas challenges me alone? Challenge away, I beg you, and if the gods are raging now, Don't let Drances appease them with his death instead of mine. If courage and glory are at stake, don't let Drances carry off the prize. But now, while they debated their heated, divisive issues, sparring back and forth, Aeneas struck camp and deployed his lines for battle. Then in the thick of the din, suddenly look, a messenger rushes in through the royal palace, spreading panic across the city. Armies marching, Trojan and Tuscan allies pouring down from the Tiber, sweeping the whole plain. Confusion reigns at once, the people's spirits distraught, raked by the spur of rage. Shaking fists, they shout, "To arms! Arms!" The ranks shout out while their fathers weep and groan. And now from all sides an enormous uproar. Cries and conflicts lift on the winds, like cries of bird flocks landing in some tall grove by chance, or swans with their hoarse calls clamoring out across the sounding pools of Pallas, a river stocked with fish. All right then, citizens, seizing his moment, Turnus calls. Summon your councils, sit there praising peace. Our enemies swoop down on our country full force. No more for them. Up he leapt and raced from the halls, shouting, "You, Lausus, call your Volscian units to arms. Move your Rutulians out. Mezentius, array the cavalry. You and your brother Chorus, range them down from the plains. Another contingent guard the gates and man the towers. The rest attack with me where I command." At once they rushed to the walls from all parts of the city. King Latinus himself, shocked by the sudden cries, leaves the council, delays his own noble plans till a better hour, over and over faults himself for not embracing Trojan Aeneas with open arms, adopting him as his son to shield the city. Others are digging trenches before the gates, hauling up on their shoulders stones and pikes, and the raucous trumpet sounds the signal. Bloody war. Then a mixed cordon of boys and mothers rings the walls as the long-last struggle calls them all together. Here is the queen, with a grand cortege of ladies bearing gifts and riding up to Minerva's temple, set on the heights, and beside her rides the girl, the Princess Lavinia, cause of all their grief, her lovely eyes bent low. Taking their lead, the ladies fill the shrine with the smoke of incense, pouring out their wails from the steep threshold. You, power of armies, queen of the battle, Pallas, virgin goddess, shatter the Phrygian's pirate's spear. Himself? Hurl him headlong, sprawled at our high gates. And Turnus in matchless fury gears himself for war. Now he's buckled his breastplate gleaming, ruddy bronze with its bristling metal scales, encased his legs in gold, his temples still bare. But his sword was strapped to his side, as down from the city heights he speeds in a flash of gold in all his glory, and all his hopes already locked fast with the enemy. Wild as a stallion bolting the paddock, burst free of the reins at last, he commands the open plain, making for pasture. Out for the herds of mares are keen for a plunge, and the river runs he knows so well. He charges off, his proud head flung back, neighing, racing on, reveling in himself, his mane sporting over his neck and shoulders. Rushing to meet him came Camilla, riding up with her armed Volscian ranks, and under the gates the princess sprang from her horse, and following suit her entire troop dismounted in one gliding flow as their captain speaks out. "Turnus, if the brave deserve to trust themselves, I'm steeled, I swear, to engage the cavalry of Aeneas, forayed out alone to confront the Tuscan squadrons. Permit me to risk the first shock of battle. You stay here on foot and guard the walls." Turnus, his eyes trained on the awesome young girl, responded, "Pride of Italy, princess, what can I do or say to show my thanks? But since that courage of yours would leap all bounds, come share the struggle with me. Aeneas, as rumor has it, in posted scouts report, has recklessly sent his light horse on ahead to harass the plains, while he himself, crossing the mountain heights by a lonely, desolate ridge, he's moving on the city. I am setting an ambush deep in a hollowed woody path and posting troops to block the passage through at both ends of the gorge. You take on the Etruscan cavalry, frontal assault, flanked by brave Mezentius, the Latin horsemen, and squadrons of Tiburtus. You two awesome the captain's joint command. With equal zeal he rallies Mezentius, rallies allied chiefs, and spurring them into battle, marches on the foe. There is a valley full of twists and turns, a perfect spot for the lures and subterfuge of battle, both of its sides closed off and dark with thick brush. A cramped path leads the way, a tightening pass. A difficult entry takes you in, a ready trap. And over it all, amid the hilltop lookout points, there's high ground, hidden, good safe shelter. Whether you'd like to attack from left or right, or stand on the ridge and roll huge boulders down, now here Turnus heads by a track he knows by heart, and staking his ground, he lurks in the woods, in ambush. While high on Olympus, Diana called swift Opus, one of her virgin comrades, one of her sacred troop, and the goddess spoke in tears. Camilla's moving out to a brutal war, dear girl, strapping on her armor all for nothing. I love her like no one else. And it's no new love, you know, that stirs Diana. No sweet lightning bolt of passion. Once, when that tyrant, Metibus, loathed by people for his abuse of power, was drummed from his kingdom, leaving Privernum's ancient town, he took his daughter, a baby, with him, fleeing the thick and fast of battle, friend to share his exile. Camilla, he called her, changing her mother's name. Casmilla, just a bit. Holding her in his arms, he made for the ridges, wild, dense with woods, with enemy weapons raining down around them. Volscian forces closing for the kill. And suddenly as they flew, the Mezentius overflowed, look, foaming over its banks. Such violent cloudbursts broke. About to swim for it, Metibus stopped short, stayed by love for his child, fear for that dear burden. As he racked his brains, desperate, deeply torn, he lit on a quick decision. His own huge spear, the fighter luckily bore it in his grip, rugged with knots, the oak wood charred hard. Rolling her up in cork bark stripped from trees, he lashed her fast to the weapon. Just mid-haft, balancing both in his right hand, he prays to the skies. Bountiful one, to you, lover of groves, Latinus' daughter, a father devotes his baby girl. Yours is the first spear she grasps as she flees the enemy through the air, pleading for your mercy. Receive her, goddess, your very own, I pray you. Now I commit my child to the fickle winds. With that, cocking back his arm, he sends the javelin whirring on, and the river roars out as over the churning rapids poor Camilla flies long on the whizzing shaft. But now his enemy fighters harry Metibus even more. He flings himself in the stream and, flushed with triumph, prized from the turf his spear and baby girl is won. His gift to you, Diana, goddess of the crossroads. No homes, no city walls would give them shelter, nor would he have consented, fierce man that he was. No, a shepherd's life on the lonely mountains. That's the life he led. There in the brush and the rough lairs of beasts, he nursed his child on raw milk from the dugs of a wild broodmare, milking its udders into her tender lips. And then, when the toddler had taken her first hesitant steps, Metibus armed her hand with a well-honed lance and slung from her tiny shoulder bow and arrows. No gold band for her hair, no long, flaring cape. A tiger skin that covered her head hung down her back. With a hand uncalloused, still she flung her baby spears, swirled a slingshot round her head with its supple strap, and bagged a crane or snowy swan by the Stremen's banks. Many a mother in Tuscan cities yearned for her as a daughter. Futile, Diana is her only passion. She nurses a lifelong love of chastity in the hunt while she remains untouched. If only she'd never been carried away to serve in such a war, bent on challenging Trojans, she'd still be one of my loyal comrades, still my own dear girl. Action. Watch, a terrible destiny drives her on. Down you dive from the high skies, Opus, my nymph. Light out for the Latin lands where battle flares and the omens all are bad. These weapons, take them. Pluck from the quiver an arrow fletched for vengeance. Use it. Whoever defiles her sacred body with a wound, Trojan, Italian, make him pay me an equal price in blood. Then I will fold her in cloud, poor girl, with all her gear, and bear Camilla's unsullied body home to a tomb, lay her to rest in her own native land. At that, Opis dove down from the sky through a light breeze, her body wrapped in a whirlwind dark as night, and whirring on her way. But all the while the Trojan forces are closing on the walls. Tuscan chiefs and a massed army of cavalry squaring off in squadrons, rank by rank. Across the entire field, the snorting chargers stamping, fighting their tight reins and veering left and right, and the plains are bristling a jagged crop of iron spears everywhere, fields ablaze with weapons brandished high. At the same time, grouping against the Trojan lines, Mezentius, the swift Latins, Chorus, his brother too, and young Camilla's wing, all marched into sight. Right arms cocked back, thrusting javelins forward, shaking vibrant lances. Infantry tramping into position, battle stallions panting, planes mounting to fever pitch. And once both armies had closed to a spear cast away, they reined back to a halt. Then abruptly surged forward, shouting, whipping their teams into combat frenzy. Weapons pelting thick as a snowstorm shrouds the skies in darkness. At once, Turnus and fierce Aeneas charge each other full tilt with their spears, and both are first to crash, shattering down with tremendous impact, splintering ribs of their battle stallions, ramming chest to chest. Aeneas, hurled off, drops like a lightning bolt or a dead weight shot forth from a siege engine, heaving headlong far away from his charger, gasping out his life breath on the winds. That moment, the lines of fighters buckle. Latins, routed, sling their shields on their backs and wheel their horses round to the walls as the Trojans drive them on, with Aeneas in the lead, his squadrons charging. Now they are nearing the gates when again the Latins raise a war cry, wrenching the horses' supple necks around while the Trojans, all reins slack, beat a deep retreat. Picture an ocean rolling, waves ebbing and flowing, now flooding onto the shore, smashing over the cliffs in a burst of foam, and drenching the bay's sandy edge. Now rushing in fast retreat, swallowing down the scree, lost in the backwash, leaving the shallows high and dry. So twice the Etruscans hurled the Latins toward their walls, twice routed, glancing round they cover their backs with shields. But when at the third assault, the whole front locked fast, fighting hand to hand, each man picked out his man. Then, truly, the groans of the dying men break loose. Weapons, bodies, a sea of blood, massacred riders, half-dead horses writhing together now in death in the pitched battle peaks. Orsilicus, fearing to face the horseman Remulus, whirls the lance at his horse instead, planting the point below its ear and furious, wild with the wound, it cannot bear the agony, rearing back, chest high, its hoofs thrashing the air as Remulus, thrown free, rolls around in the dust. And Catullus brings down Aeolus. Then Herminius, massive in courage, immense in brawn and armor, his blonde locks flowing bare and his shoulders bare. No fear of wounds, so huge his body exposed to spears. But Catullus's shaft goes hammering through him, quivering out his broad back, and it doubles up the man impaled with pain. Everywhere, black tides of blood, iron clashing, slaughter, fighters striving for death with glory through their wounds. Watch, exulting here in the thick of carnage, in Amazon, one breast bared for combat, quiver at hand, Camilla. Now she rifles hardened spears from her hand in salvus. Now she seizes a rugged double axe in her tireless grasp, Diana's golden archery clashing on her shoulder. Even forced to withdraw, she swerves her bow and showers arrows, wheeling in full flight. And round Camilla ride her elite companions, Tulla, young Larina, Tarpeia, brandishing high her brazen axe, daughters of Italy all. She chose to be her glory, godlike Camilla's aids in peace and war, and while as Thracian Amazons galloping, pounding along Thermodon's banks, fighting in burnished gear around Hippolyta, or when Penthesilea, born of Mars, comes sweeping home in her car, an army of women lifts their rolling, shrilling cries in welcome, exulting with half-moon shields. Fierce young girl, who is the first and who the last your spear cuts down? How many dying bodies do you spread out on the earth? Aeneas, son of Clytius first, his chest unshielded, charging Camilla now, who runs her enemy through with her long pine lance, and he vomits spurts of blood, gnawing the gory earth, twisting himself around his wound as the Trojan breathes his last. Then Lyris, Pegasus over him, Lyris struggling to clutch his reins, thrown from his horse as it goes sprawling under him. Pegasus rushes to help his falling comrade, reaches out with an unarmed hand, and both of them side by side pitch headlong down. And adding kills, she takes Amistris, Hippotas' son, then attacking at long range with spear casts pierces Tereus and Harpalycus. Then Demophoon, Chromis too, and for every shaft the girl let fly from her hand, another Phrygian fighter bit the dust. Here's Aeneas, riding his Apulian charger in from a distance, all decked out in exotic armor. The huntsman setting up for a soldier. A bull's hide covers his broad shoulders. The big yawning maw of a wolf with glistening fangs in its jaws protects his head, and Hunter's hook-tipped javelin arms his hand, as into the press he goes, topping all by a head, but Camilla runs him down, easy work with the ranks in full retreat, and spears him through, exulting over his body with all the hatred in her heart. Still in the woods, you thought, in flesh and game, my fine Etruscan hunter. Well, the day has come when a woman's weapons prove your daydreams wrong. Still, you carry no mean fame to your father's shades. Just tell them this. You died by Camilla's spear. Lunging, she kills a pair of massive Trojans, Bootes and Orsilochus. Bootes, his back turned, she stabs between the helmet and breastplate. Just where the horseman's neck shines bare, the shield on his left arm dangles down, off guard. And fleeing Orsilochus now as the Trojan drives her round in a huge ring, Camilla tricks him, wheeling inside him quick, the pursuer now the pursued as she rears above him. Praying, begging for mercy, her battle axe smashes down, blow after blow through armor, bone, splitting his skull. Warm brains from the wound go splashing down his face. Suddenly, right before Camilla, stunned with terror to see her there, stands Aeneas' fighting son, an Apennine man, and not the least of Liguria's liars, while the fates allow. Once he sees there is no running away from battle, no turning aside Camilla's attack, he tries to devise a ruse with all his craft and cunning, letting loose. Now where's the glory, tell me? A woman putting her trust in a powerful horse? No more running away. Meet me on level ground in combat, hand to hand, gear up to fight on foot. You'll soon see whose windy boasts of glory cheat him blind. Raked by the scathing taunt, Camilla blazes up in rage, hands off her horse to Aeneid and takes her stand against the Ligurian. Fearless on foot and armed like him with a naked sword and still unbattered shield. But quick as a flash the soldier, certain his guile had won the day, runs away himself, yanking his reins around and digging iron spurs in his racing stallion's flanks. Ligurian fool, so bloated with your empty pride, pulling your slippery inbred tricks for nothing. Fraud will never carry you home safe and sound to your lying father Aeneas. So young Camilla cries, and lightning fast on her feet outruns the charger, snatches the reins and facing her enemy dead on, makes him pay with his own detested blood. Quick as Apollo's falcon wheeling around from a crag, outraces a dove in flight to a high cloud, seizes it, clutches it, hooked talons ripping its insides out, its blood and plucked feathers drifting down the sky. But the father of men and gods, far from blind, throned on his steep Olympian peak, observes it all, and stirs Etruscan Tarchon into the savage fighting, lashing the trooper on with a rough spur of rage. So into the bloody, buckling lines rides Tarchon, goading his horsemen on with a burst of mixed cries, rallying each by name, spurring the routed back to battle. What's your fear, you Tuscans forever deaf to shame, always slacking off? What cowardice saps your courage? What, is a woman routing squadrons strong as ours? Why have swords or useless lances gripped in our fists? By now, but you're not slow when it comes to nightly bouts of love, when the curved flute strikes up some frantic Bacchic dance. Linger on for the feasts and cups at the groaning board. That's your love, your lust, till the seer will bless and proclaim the sacrifice, and the rich victim lures you into the deep groves. With that, he whips his warhorse into the press, braced to die himself, He rushes Venulus headlong, sweeps him off his mount and hugging his enemy tight to his chest with his clenched right arm, gallops away with him, racing off full tilt. A cry hits the skies, all the Latins turning to watch as Tarchon flies like wildfire down the field, bearing the man and weapons both, then wrenches off the iron point of Venulus' spear and delves around for a spot laid bare where a lethal blow might land, the other fighting off the enemy's hand from his throat, pitting force against fury. Swift as golden eagle seizes a snake and towers into the sky, talons knotted round it, claws clutching fast, but the wounded serpent writhes in its rippling coils, stiffens, scales bristling, hissing through its fangs as it rears its head, but all the more the eagle keeps on digging into its struggling victim, its hooked beak ripping away, its wings thrashing the air. So Tarchon sweeps his kill, right from the Tiber's columns, Tarchon flushed with triumph, following hard on their captain's feet and clear success. The Etruscans swing to attack, as Aruns start to circle swift Camilla, a match for her spear yet more adept at cunning. His life is doomed by the fates, but now he tests his luck for the quickest way in. Wherever Camilla rages, plunging into the front, there Aruns stalks her, quietly tracks her steps, whenever she downs a foe and turns around for home. Now he tugs at his fast reins and ducks from sight. Now this approach, now that, exploring the circuit round from every side, he shakes his fatal spear in his ruthless fist. By chance, one Chlorius, sacred to goddess Cybele, once her priest, Camilla spied him at long range, gleaming in Phrygian gear, spurring a lathered warhorse decked with coat of mail, its brazen scales meshing with gold like feathers stitched. He himself, aflame in outlandish reds and purples, shot Gortinian shafts from a Lycian bow, a bow of gold slung from the priest's shoulders. Gold his helmet too, and he knotted his saffron cape in flaring linen pleats with a tawny golden brooch. His shirt and barbarous leggings, stiff with needled braid. Camilla, keen to fix some Trojan arms on a temple wall or sport some golden plunder out on the hunt, she tracked him now, one man in the moil of war. She stalked him wildly, reckless through the ranks, afire with a woman's lust for loot and plunder when, grasping his chance at last, rising from ambush, Aruns flings his spear with a winged prayer aloft. Apollo, highest of the gods, Lord of holy Soracte, we worship you first and foremost, honor your fires stoked by cords of pine, and we your celebrants firm in our faith, we plant our feet in your embers glowing hot. Grant, Father, our shame be blotted out by our spears, almighty God Apollo. I'm not bent on plunder, stripped from a girl, no trophy over her corpse. My other feats of arms will win me glory, if only this murderous scourge drops dead beneath my strokes. Back I'll go to my father's towns, unsung. Apollo heard and willed that part of the prayer would win the day, but part he scattered abroad on the ruffling winds. That Aruns should cut Camilla down in sudden death. That he granted true, but not that his noble land should see him home again, and the gusting south wind swept that prayer away. So when he sent his javelin hissing through the air, and all the Volscians, wheeling, trained their eyes and alert minds on the princess, she was numb to it all. The draft, the hiss, the weapon sent from the blue, until the spear went ripping through her, on her naked breast, and it struck deep. It hammered home and drank her virgin blood. Her frightened comrades hurry to brace their falling queen, but Aruns races off, more frantic than all the rest. His triumph mixed with terror, no longer trusting his spear or daring to meet the young girl's weapons point blank. Like the wolf that's killed some shepherd or hulking ox, and before attacking spears can catch him, races off at once, darting into the pathless hills for cover. He knows he's done some outrage. Frantic now, he tucks his trembling tail between his legs and heads for the woods. So Aruns, shaken, slinking from sight, content with a bare escape, loses himself in the milling lines of fighters. Camilla, dying, tugs at the spear, but the iron point stands fixed in the deep wound, wedged between her ribs. She's faint from loss of blood, her eyes failing, chill with death, and the glowing color she had once fades away. Then as she breathes her last, she calls to Acca, alone of her young comrades, more than all the others true to Camilla, the only one with whom she shares her cares, and here's what she says. This far, Acca, my sister, and I can go no further. Now the raw wound saps my strength, darkness everywhere closing in around me. Go quickly, carry my last commands to Turnus. Take over the fighting, free the town from Trojans. Now farewell. With Camilla's last words, she lost her grip on the reins and, all against her will, slipped down to the ground. Little by little she grew cold, and wholly freed of her body, laid down her head as her neck drooped limp in the clutch of death, and she let her weapons fall. Camilla's life breath fled with a groan of outrage down to the shades below. And then, at that, an immense cry rose up and hit the golden stars. With Camilla down, the melee peaks to a new pitch, the masses surging forward, the whole Trojan army, Etruscan captains, Evander's Arcadian wings. But all the while Diana's sentry, Opus, posted high on a ridge, has scanned the fighting, unperturbed. And when at a distance she could see, clearing the thick of battle, war cries, warrior's fury. Camilla beaten down by the brutal stroke of death, she moaned, crying out from the bottom of her heart. Too cruel, dear girl, too cruel the price you pay for trying, begging to challenge the men of Troy in combat. What gain for you, your lonely life in the forest serving Diana, our quiver round your shoulder? But your queen has not deserted you, shorn of honor, not in your hour of death, nor will your death lack glory among the race of man. Nor will you bear the shame of dying unavenged. Whoever defiled your body, with that wound will pay, with the death that he deserves. Under the mountain ridges stood an immense mound of earth, hedged with shady ilex, the tomb of Dircenis, an old Laurentine king. Here with a swoop the lovely goddess first took up her post, from the high ground looking round for Aruns, and seeing him gleam in armor, puffed with pride. Why running away, she shouted. Step right up, just come this way, to die. Collect the reward you've earned for Camilla's death. Just think, you are to die by the arrows of Diana. That said, the Thracian goddess, plucking a wind-swift shaft from a golden quiver, drew her bow with a vengeance, back to a full draw, till the curved horns all but touched, her balanced hands tense. Left-handed the iron point, right-handed the bowstring stretched to her breast. Then, the instant that Aruns heard the whizzing shaft, in whirring air the iron stuck home in his flesh. As he gasps out his last, his oblivious comrades leave him sprawled in the nameless dust, and Opus flies away to Mount Olympus. Their captain gone, Camilla's light horse squadrons are first to flee. The harried Rutulians flee, and brave Aeneas too. Leaders routed, and frontline men, their leaders lost, make for safety, swerving their horses, racing for the walls. But nothing can halt the Trojans' fierce offensive now. No weapons can stop them, nothing stand against them. Home the Latins go, slack bows on sagging shoulders, galloping hoofbeats pound the rutted plain with thunder, as the dust storm dark as night goes whirling around toward the walls. The mothers stand out at the lookouts, beating their breasts, raising the women's shrilling wails to the starry sky. And the first Latins to rush through the open gates, enemies mixing in with their own ranks crowd them hard, nor can they find escape from a wretched death, no. Right at the entrance, just in their native walls, in the safe retreat of home, they're pierced by spears and pant their lives away. Some shut the gates, not daring to clear a safe way in for comrades, beg as they will, and a ghastly bloodbath follows. Defenders killed at the entries, enemies flung on swords. Shut out in the front of their parents' faces, eyes streaming tears, some pitch headlong into the trenches, pressed by the rout. Some charge wildly, reins flying, ramming the gateways blocked by the rugged posts. And even mothers up in the ramparts strive. Their genuine love of country marks the way. They'd seen Camilla fight. They hurl their weapons with trembling hands, daring to do the work of iron with pikes of rugged oak and poles charred hard. Defending their city walls, they all burn to be the first to die. At the same time, the wrenching news hits Turnus still in the woods. It arrives in force as Acca brings her commander word of stark disaster. Volscian units routed, Camilla fallen, Enemy armies surging on, attacking on all fronts. And Mars in his triumph, panic already shakes the walls. Turnus in all his fury, that's what the ruthless will of Jove demands. Abandons his hilltop ambush, quits the shaggy grove. He was barely out of sight and about to range the plain when Captain Aeneas, moving through the exposed pass, climbs the ridge and comes forth from the shady woods. So now both men are speeding towards the walls, not many strides between their armies marching in total strength. Then, the moment Aeneas spied the dust storm swirling down the plain, the long lines of Latian fighters, Turnus spied Aeneas, savage in armor, and caught the tramp of marching infantry. Battle stallions panting. They would have clashed at once and tried their luck in war, but the ruddy sun has plunged his weary team in the western sea, and as daylight slips away he brings the nightfall on. Now both armies come to a halt before the city, building dikes to fortify their camps. Book 12. The Sword Decides All. Once Turnus sees his ranks of Latins broken in battle, their spirits dashed and the war god turned against them. Now is the time, he knows, for him to keep his pledge. All eyes are fixed on him, his blood is up, and nothing can quench the fighter's ardor now. Think of the lion ranging the fields near Carthage. The beast won't move into battle till he takes a deep wound in his chest from the hunters. Then he revels in combat. Tossing the rippling mane on his neck, he snaps the spear some stalker drove in his flesh and roars from bloody jaws without a fear in the world. So Turnus blazes up in full explosive fury, bursting out at the king with reckless words. Turnus spurns all delay. Now there's no excuse for those craven sons of Aeneas to break their word, to forsake the pact we swore. I'll take him on, I will. Bring on the sacred rites, father. Draft our binding terms. Either my right arm will send that Dardan down to hell, that rank deserter of Asia. My armies can sit back and watch, and Turnus' sword alone will rebut the charge of cowardice trained against them all. Or let him reign over those he's beaten down. Let Lavinia go to him, his bride. Latinus replied in a calming, peaceful way. Brave of the brave, my boy. The more you excel in feats of daring, the more it falls to me to weigh the perils with all my fears, the lethal risks we run. The realms of your father, Daunus, are yours to manage. So are the many towns your right arm took by force. Latinus, too, has wealth and the will to share it. We've other unwed girls in Latian and Laurentine fields, and no mean stock at that. So let me offer this, hard as it is, yet free and clear of deception. Take it to heart, I urge you. For me to unite my daughter with any one of her former suitors would have been wrong, forbidden. All the gods and prophets made that plain. But I bowed to my love of you, bowed to our kindred blood and my wife's heart-rending tears. I broke all bonds. I tore the promised bride from her waiting groom. I brandished a wicked sword. Since then, Turnus, you see what assaults, what crises dog my steps. What labors you have shouldered, you, first of all. Beaten twice in major battles, our city walls can scarcely harbor Italy's future hopes. The rushing Tiber still steams with our blood, the endless fields still glisten with our bones. Why do I shrink from my decision? What insanity shifts my fixed resolve? If, with Turnus dead, I am ready to take the Trojans on as allies, why not stop the war while he's still alive? What will your Rutulians, all the rest of Italy, say if I betray you to death? May fortune forbid. While you appeal for my daughter's hand in marriage. Oh, think back on the twists and turns of war. Pity your father, bent with years and grief, cut off from you in your native city, Ardea, far away. Latinus' urgings deflect the fury of Turnus not one bit. It only surges higher. The attempts to heal inflame the fever more. Soon as he finds his breath, the prince breaks out. The anguish you bear for my sake, generous king, for my sake, I beg you, wipe it from your mind. Let me barter death as the price of fame. I have weapons too, old father, and no weak, untempered spears go flying from my right hand. From the wounds we deal, the blood comes flowing too. His mother, the goddess, she'll be far from his side, with her woman's wiles, lurking in stealthy shadows, hiding him in clouds when our hero cuts and runs. But the queen, afraid of the new rules of engagement, wept, and bent on her own death embraced her ardent son-in-law to be. Turnus, by these tears of mine, by any concern for Amata that moves your heart, you are my only hope now, you the one relief to my wretched old age. In your hands alone the glory and power of King Latinus rest. You alone can shore our sinking house. One favor now I pray you. Refrain from going hand to hand with the Trojans. Whatever dangers await you in that one skirmish, Turnus, await me too. With you I will forsake the light of this life I hate, never in shackles live to see Aeneas as my son. As Lavinia heard her mother's pleas, her warm cheeks bathed in tears, a blush flamed up and infused her glowing features. As crimson as Indian ivory stained with ruddy dye, or white lilies aglow in a host of scarlet roses, so mixed the hues that lit the young girl's face. Turnus, struck with love, fixing his eyes briefly upon her, fired the more for combat, tells Amata, "Don't, I beg you, mother, send me off with tears, with evil omens as I go into the jolting shocks of war, since Turnus is far from free to defer his death. Be my messenger, Idmon. Take my words to Aeneas. Hardly words to please that craven Phrygian king. Soon as the sky goes red with tomorrow's dawn, riding Aurora's blood-red chariot wheels, he's not to hurl his Trojans against our Latins. He must let Trojan and Latian armies stand at ease. Our blood will put an end to this war at last. That's the field where Lavinia must be won." No more words. Rushing back to the palace, Turnus calls for his team, and thrills to see them neighing right before him. Gifts from Erythia herself to glorify Pilumnus. Horses whiter than snow, swifter than racing winds. Restless charioteers flank them, patting their chests, slapping with cupped hands, and grooming their rippling manes. Next, Turnus buckles round his shoulders the breastplate, dense with its golden mesh and livid mountain bronze, and straps on sword, shield, and helmet with horns for its bloody crest. That sword the fire god forged for Father Daunus, plunged red-hot in the river Styx. And next, with his powerful grip, he snatches up a burly spear aslant in an enormous central column. Plunder seized from an enemy. Actor shakes it hard till the haft quivers, and "Now my spear," he cries. "You've never failed my call, and now our time has come. Great Actor wielded you once. Now you're in Turnus's hands. Let me spill his corpse on the ground and strip his breastplate, rip it to bits with my bare hands, that Phrygian eunuch, defile his hair in the dust, his tresses crimped with a white-hot curling iron dripping myrrh." Frenzy drives him. Turnus's whole face is ablaze, showering sparks, his dazzling glances glinting fire, terrible, bellowing like some bull before the fight begins, trying to pour his fury into his horns. He rams a tree trunk, charges the wind's full force, stamping sprays of sand as he warms up for battle. At the same time, Aeneas, just as fierce in the arms his mother gave him, hones his fighting spirit too and incites his anger, glad the war will end with a pact that Turnus offers. Then he eases his friends and anxious Aeolus's fears, explaining the ways of fate, commanding envoys now to return his firm reply to King Latinus, state the terms of peace. A new day was just about to dawn, scattering light on the mountain tops, the horses of the sun just rearing up from the ocean's depths, breathing forth the light from their flaring nostrils when the Latins and Trojans were pacing off the dueling ground below the great city's walls, spacing the braziers out between both armies, mounting the grassy altars high to the gods they shared in common. Others, cloaked in their sacred aprons, brows wreathed in verbena, brought out spring water and sacramental fire. The Italian troops marched forth, pouring out of the packed gates in tight, massed ranks, and fronting them, the entire Trojan and Tuscan force comes rushing up, decked out in a range of arms, no less equipped with iron than if the brutal war god had called them forth to battle. And there in the midst of milling thousands, chiefs paraded left and right, resplendent in all their purple and gold regalia. Mezentius, bloodkin of Assaracus, hardy Aeschylus, then Messapus, breaker of horses, Neptune's son. The signal sounds. All withdraw to their stations, plant spears in the ground, and cant their shields against them. Then in an avid stream the mothers and unarmed crowds and frail old men find seats on towers and rooftops. Others take their stand on the high gates. But Juno, looking out from a ridge now called the Alban Mount, then it had neither name, renown nor glory, gazed down on the plain, on Italian and Trojan armies face to face, and Latinus' city walls. At once she called to Turnus' sister, goddess to goddess, the lady of lakes and rilling brooks, and honor the high and mighty king of heaven bestowed on Juturna once he had ravished the virgin girl. Nymph, beauty of streams, our heart's desire, well you know how I have favored you, you above all the Italian women who have mounted that ungrateful bed of our warm-hearted Jove. I gladly assign you a special place in heaven. So learn, Juturna, the grief that comes your way, and don't blame me. While fortune seemed to allow and fate to suffer the Latian state to thrive, I guarded Turnus, guarded your city walls. But now I see the soldier facing unequal odds, his day of doom, his enemy's blows approaching. That duel, that deadly pact, I cannot bear to watch. But if you dare help your brother at closer range, go and do so. It becomes you. Who knows? Better times may come to those in pain. Juno had barely closed when tears brimmed in Juturna's eyes, and 3-4 times over she beat her lovely breast. No time for tears, not now, warned Saturn's daughter. Hurry, pluck your brother from death if there's a way, or drum up war and abort that treaty they conceived. The design is mine, the daring yours. Spurring her on, Juno left Juturna torn, distraught with a wound that broke her heart. As the kings come riding in, a massive 4-horse chariot draws Latinus forth, his glistening temples ringed by a dozen gilded rays, proof he owes his birth to the sun god's line. And a snow-white pair brings Turnus' chariot on, 2 steel-tipped javelins balanced in his grip. And coming to meet them, marching from the camp, the great founder Aeneas, source of the Roman race, with his blazoned starry shield and armor made in heaven. And at his side, his son Ascanius, second hope of Rome's imposing power, while a priest in pure white robes leads on the young of a bristly boar and an unshorn yearling sheep toward the flaming altars. Turning their eyes to face the rising sun, the captains reach out their hands, pouring the salted meal, and mark off the brows of the victims, cutting tufts with iron blades, and tip their cups on the sacred altar fires. Then devoted Aeneas, sword drawn, prays. Now let the sun bear witness here in this land of Italy that I call. For your sake I am able to bear such hardships, and Jove Almighty and you, his queen, Saturnia, goddess, be kinder now, I pray you, now at last. And you, Father, glorious Mars, you who command the revolving world of war beneath your sway. I call on the springs and streams, the gods enthroned in the arching sky, and gods of the deep blue sea. If by chance the victory goes to the Latin, Turnus, we agree the defeated will depart to Evander's city. Aeolus will leave this land. Nor will Aeneas' Trojans ever revert in times to come, take up arms again, and threaten to put this kingdom to the sword. But if victory grants our force in arms the day, as I think she may the gods decree it so, I shall not command Italians to bow to Trojans, nor do I seek the scepter for myself. May both nations, undefeated, under equal laws, march together toward an eternal pact of peace. I shall bestow the gods and their sacred rights. My father-in-law Latinus will retain his armies, my father-in-law his power, his rightful rule. The men of Troy will erect a city for me. Lavinia will give its walls her name. So Aeneas begins, and so Latinus follows, eyes lifted aloft, his right hand raised to the sky. I swear by the same, Aeneas, earth and sea and stars, by Latinus' brood of twins, by Aeneas facing left and right, by the gods who rule below in the shrine of ruthless death, may the Father hear my oath, his lightning seals all pacts. My hand on his altar now, I swear by the gods and fires that rise between us here, the day will never dawn when Italian men will break this pact, this peace, however fortune falls. No power can bend awry my will, not if that power sends the country avalanching into the waves, roiling all in floods and plunging the heavens into the dark pit of hell. Just as purely as this scepter, raising the scepter he chanced to be grasping in his hand, will never sprout new green or scatter shade from its tender leaves, now that it's been cut from its trunk's base in the woods, cleft from its mother, its limbs and crowning foliage lost to the iron axe. A tree, once that a craftsman's hands have sheathed in hammered bronze and given the chiefs of Latium's state to wield. So, on such terms, they sealed a pact of peace between both sides, witnessed by all the officers of the armies. Then they slashed the throats of the hallowed victims over the flames, and tear their pulsing entrails out, and heaped the altars high with groaning platters. But in fact, the duel had long seemed uneven to all the Rutulians. Long their hearts were torn, wavering back and forth, and they only wavered more as they viewed the two contenders at closer range, poorly matched in power. Turnus adds to their anguish, quietly moving toward the altar, eyes downcast to pray. A suppliant now, his fresh cheeks and his strong body pallid. Soon as his sister Juturna saw such murmurs rise, and the hearts of people slipping into doubt, into the lines she goes like cameras to the life. A soldier sprung from a grand ancestral clan, his father a name for valor, brilliant deeds, and he himself renowned for feats of arms. Into the center lines Juturna strides, alert to the work at hand, and she sows a variety of rumors, urging, "Aren't you ashamed, Rutulians, putting at risk the life of one to save us all? Don't we match them in numbers, power? Look, these are all they've got. Trojans, Arcadians, and all the Etruscan forces, slaves to fate. To battle Turnus an army. Why, if only half of us went to war, each soldier could hardly find a foe. But Turnus, think, he'll rise on the wings of fame to meet the gods on whose altars he has offered up his life. He will live forever, sung on the lips of men. But we, if we lose our land, will bow to the yoke, enslaved by our new high lords and masters, we who idle on amid our fields." Stinging taunts inflame the will of the fighters all the more, till a low, growing murmur steals along the lines. Even Laurentines, even Latins change their tune. Men who had just now longed for peace and safety, long for weapons, pray the pact be dashed, and pity the unjust fate that Turnus faces. Then, crowning all, Juturna adds a greater power. She displays in the sky the strongest sign that ever dazed Italian minds and deceived them with its wonders. The golden eagle of Jove, in flight through the blood-red sky, was harrying shorebirds, routing their squadron's shrieking ranks, when suddenly down he swoops to the stream and grasps the swan out in the lead with its ruthless talons. This the Italians watch, enthralled as the birds all scream and swerving round in flight. A marvel, look! They overshadow the sky with wings, and forming a dense cloud bank, force their enemy high up through the air until, beaten down by their strikes and his victim's weight, his talons drop the kill and the rivers run, and into the clouds the eagle winged away. Struck, the Italians shout out, saluting that great omen, all hands eager to take up arms, and the augur Tolumnius urges first. This, he cries, is the answer to all my prayers. I embrace it. I recognize the gods. I will lead you. Reach for your swords now, my poor people. Like helpless birds, terrorized by the war that ruthless invader brings you, devastating your shores by force of arms. He too will race in flight and wing away, setting his sails to cross the farthest seas. Close ranks, every man of you mass with one resolve. Fight to save your king the marauder seized. Enough. Lunging out, he whips a spear at the foes he faced, and the whizzing javelin hisses, rips the air dead on, and at the instant a huge outcry, ranks in a wedge in disarray, lines buckling, hearts at a fever pitch as the shaft wings on where a band of 9 brothers with fine bodies chance to block its course. One mother bore them all, a Tuscan, loyal Tirrena, wed to Gylippus, her Arcadian husband. And one of these, in the waist where the braided belt chafes the flesh, and the buckle clasps the strap from end to end, a striking, well-built soldier in burnished bronze. The spear splits his ribs and splays him out on the sand. But his brothers, a phalanx up in arms, inflamed by grief, some tear swords from sheaths, and some snatch up their spears and all press blindly on. As the Latian columns charging them, come Aguillenes and Trojans streaming up with Arcadian ranks decked out in blazoned gear, and one lust drives them all, to let the sword decide. Altars plundered for torches, down from menacing clouds torn of spears, and the iron rain pelts thick and fast as they carry off the holy bulls in sacred braziers. Even Latinus flees, cradling his defeated gods and shattered pact to peace. Others harness teams to chariots, others vault up onto their horses, swords brandished, tense for attack. Mezentius, keen to disrupt the truce, whips his charger straight at Tuscan Aeneas, king adorned with his kingly emblems, forcing him back in terror. And back he trips, poor man, stumbling, crashing head over shoulders into the altar, rearing behind him there. And Mezentius, fired up now, flies at him, looming over him, high in the saddle, to strike him dead with his rugged beamy lance, the king begging for mercy, Mezentius shouting, "This one's finished. Here, a choicer victim offered up to the great gods." And the Latins rush to strip the corpse still warm. Rushing to block them, Aeneas grabs a flaming torch from the altar, just so Aeneas can't strike first, and hurls fire in the Latin's face, and his huge beard flares up, reeking with burnt singe. And following on that blow, he seizes his dazed foe's locks in his left hand, and pins him fast to the ground with a knee full force, and digs his rigid blade in Aeneas' flank. Podalirius, tracking the shepherd Lausus, hurtles through the front where the spears shower down. He is rearing over him now with his naked sword, but Lausus, swirling his axe head back, strikes him square in the skull, cleaving brow to chin, and convulsive sprays of blood imbrue his armor. Grim repose and an iron sleep press down his eyes, and shut their light in a night that never ends. But Aeneas, bound to his oath, his head exposed and the hand unarmed, he was stretching toward his comrades, shouted out, "Why are you running? Why the sudden outbreak? Why these clashes? Rein your anger in. The pact's already struck. Its terms are set. Now I alone have the right to enter combat. Don't hold me back. Cast your fears to the wind. This strong right arm will put our truce to the proof. Our rights have already made the life of Turnus mine." Just in the midst of these outcries, look, a winging arrow whizzes in, and it hits Aeneas. Nobody knows who shot it, rolled it on to bring the Rutulians such renown. What luck, what god. The shining fame of the feat is shrouded over now. Nobody boasted he had struck Aeneas, no one. Turnus, soon as he saw Aeneas falling back from the lines, his chiefs in disarray, ignites with a blaze of hope. He demands his team in arms at once. In a flash of pride, he leaps onto his chariot, tugging hard on the reins, and races on, and droves of the brave he hands to death, and tumbles droves of the half-dead down to earth, or crushes whole detachments under his wheels, or seizing their lances, cuts down all who cut and run. Amok as Mars by the banks of the Hebrus frozen over, splattered with blood, fired to fury, drumming his shield as he whips up war and gives his frenzied team free rein, and over the open fields they outstrip the winds from south and west, till the far frontiers of Thrace groan to their pounding hoofs, and round him shapes of black fear, rage, and ambush. Aids of the war god gallop on and on. Just so madly Turnus whips his horses into the heart of battle, chargers steaming sweat, trampling enemy fighters killed in agony, kicking gusts of blood spray, their hoofs stamping into the sand the clotted gore. Now he's dealing death to Sthenelus, Tamaris, Pholus. Sthenelus speared at long range, the next two hand to hand, at a distance to both sons of Imbrasus, Glaucus and Lates. Imbrasus had reared them himself in Lycia once, and equipped them both with matching weapons, either to fight close up or outrace the winds on horseback. Another sector, Eumedes charges into the melee, grandson of old Eumedes, bearing that veteran's name, but famed for his father Dolin's heart and hand in war. Dolin, who once dared to ask for Achilles' chariot, his reward for spying out the Achaean camp. But Diomedes paid his daring a different reward. Now he no longer dreams of the horses of Achilles. Eumedes, spotting him far out on the open meadow, Turnus hits him first with a light spear winged across that empty space, then races up to him, halts his team, and rearing over the dying Trojan, plants a foot on his neck, and tears the sword from his grip. A flash of the blade, he stains it red in the man's throat, and to top it off cries out, "Look here, Trojan, here are the fields, the great land of the west you fought to win in war. Lie there, take their measure. That's the reward they all will carry off who risk my blade. That's how they build their walls." A whirl of his spear, and Turnus sends Asbides to join him, Chlorius too, and Sybaris, Dares, Thucylicus, then Timoetes, pitched down over the neck of his buckling horse. Like a blast of the Thracian north wind howling over the deep Aegean, whipping the waves toward shore, wherever the winds burst down the clouds take flight through the sky, so Turnus, wherever he hacks his path, the lines buckle in and the ranks turn tail, and run as his own drive sweeps him on, his rushing chariot charging the gusts that toss his crest. Phagius could not face his assault, his deafening cries. He flung himself before the chariot, right hand wrestling the horse's jaws around as they came charging into him, frothing at their bits, then dragged him dangling down from the yoke as Turnus's spearhead hit his exposed flank, and ripping the double links of his breastplate, there it stuck, just grazing the fighter's skin. But raising his shield, swerving to brave his foe, he strained to save himself with his naked sword. Then the wheel and whirling axle knocked him headlong, ground him into the dust. Turnus, finishing up with a stroke between the helmet's base and the breastplate's upper rim, hacked off his head and left his trunk in the sand. And now, while Turnus is spreading death across the plains in all his triumph, Mezentius and trusty Aeneas, Ascanius at their side, are setting Aeneas down in camp, bleeding, propping himself on his lengthy spear at every step. Furious, struggling to tear the broken arrowhead out, he insists they take the quickest way to heal him. Cut the wound with a broadsword, open it wide, dig out the point where it's bedded deep, and put me back into action. Now up comes Epix, Aeneas' son, and dear to Apollo more than all other men, and once, in the anguished grip of love, the god himself gladly offered him all his own arts, his gifts, his prophetic skills, his lyre, his flying shafts. But he, desperate to slow the death of his dying father, preferred to master the power of herbs, the skills that cure, and pursue a healer's practice, silent and unsung. But Aeneas, pressed by a crowd of friends, and Aeolus grieving sorely, the fighters stood there bridling, fuming, hunched on his rugged spear, unmoved by all their tears. The old surgeon, his robe tucked back and cinched in the healer's way, with his expert healing hands and Apollo's potent herbs, he works for all he's worth. No use as his right hand tugs at the shaft and his clamping forceps grip the iron point. No good luck guides his probes. Apollo the master lends no help. And all the while the ruthless horror of war grows greater, grimmer throughout the field, a disaster ever closer. Now they see a pillar of dust upholding the sky and the horsemen riding on, and dense salvus of weapons raining down in the camp's heart. The cries of torment reach the heavens as young men fight and die beneath the iron fists of Mars. At this point, Venus, shocked by the unfair pain her son endures, calls with a mother's care some dittany fresh from Cretan Ida, spear erect with its tender leaves and crown of purple flowers. No stranger to wild goats who graze it when flying arrows are planted in their backs. This she bears away, her features veiled in a heavy mist. This she distills in secret into the river water poured in burnished bowls, and fills them with healing power, and sprinkles ambrosial juices, bringing health, and redolent cure-all too. With this potion, aged Epix laved the wound, quite unaware, and suddenly all the pain dissolved from Aeneas' body, all the blood that pooled in his wound instanched, and the shaft, with no force required, slipped out in the healer's hand, and the old strength came back, fresh as it was at first. Quick, fetch him his weapons, don't just stand there, Epix cries, the first to inflame their hearts against the foe. This strong cure, it's none of the work of human skills, no expert's arts in action. My right hand, Aeneas, never saved your life. Something greater, a god, is speeding you back to greater exploits. Starved for war, Aeneas had cased his calves in gold, left and right, and spurning delay, he shakes his glinting spear. Once he has fitted shield to hip and harness to his back, he clasps Ascanius fast in an ironclad embrace, and kissing him lightly through his visor says, "Learn courage from me, my son, true hardship too. Learn good luck from others. My hand will shield you in war today and guide you toward the great rewards. But mark my words, soon as you ripen into manhood, reaching back for the models of your kin, remember Father Aeneas and Uncle Hector fire your heart." Urgings over, out of the gates he strode, immense in strength, waving his massive spear. Antheus and Mezentius flank him closely, dashing on, and from the deserted camp roll all their swarming ranks. The field is a swirl of blinding dust, the earth quaking under their thundering tread. From the opposing rampart, Turnus saw them coming on. His Italians saw them too, and an icy chill of dread ran through their bones. First in the Latin ranks, Juturna caught the sound, and she knew what it meant, and seized with trembling fled. But Aeneas flies ahead, spurring his dark ranks on and storming over the open fields like a cloudburst wiping out the sun, sweeping over the seas toward land, and well in advance the poor unlucky farmers, hearts shuddering, know what it will bring. Trees uprooted, crops destroyed, their labors in ruin far and wide. And the winds come first, churning an uproar toward the shore. So the Trojans storm in, their commander heading them toward the foe, their tight ranks packed in a wedge, comrade linked with comrade massing hard. A slash of a sword. Thymbraeus finished giant Osiris. Mezentius kills Arcadius. Achates hacks Epilo down, and Gaius Uphans. Even the seer Tolumnius falls, the first to wing a lance against the foe. Cries hit the heavens. Now it's the Latins' time to turn tail and flee across the fields in a cloud of dust. Aeneas never stoops to leveling men who show their backs, or makes for the ones who fight him fairly toe-to-toe, or the ones who fling their spears at longer range. No, it's Turnus alone he's tracking, eyes alert through the murky haze of battle. Turnus alone, Aeneas demands to fight. Juturna, terror-struck at the thought, the woman warrior knocks Mezentius, Turnus' charioteer, from between the reins he grasps, and leaves him sprawling far from the chariot pole, as she herself takes over, shaking the rippling reins like Mezentius to the life, his voice, his build, his gear. Quick as a black swift darts along through the great halls of a wealthy lord, and scavenging morsels, banquet scraps for her chirping nestlings. All her twitterings echo now in the empty colonnades, now round the brimming ponds. So swiftly Juturna drives her team at the Trojan center, darts along in her chariot, whirling through the field. Now here, there, displaying her brother in his glory, true. But she never lets him come to grips. She swerves far away. But Aeneas, no less bent on meeting him up with the enemy, stalks his victim, circling round him, turn by turn, and his shrill cries call him through the broken ranks. As often as he caught sight of his prey and strained to outstrip the speed of that team that raced the wind, so often Juturna wheeled the chariot round and swooped away. What should he do? No hope. He seethes on a heaving sea as warring anxieties call him back and forth. Then Mezentius, just sprinting along with a pair of steel-tipped spears in his left hand, training one on the Trojan, lets it fly, right on target. Aeneas stopped in his tracks and huddled under his shield, crouching down on a knee, but the spear in its onrush swiped the peak of his helmet off and swept away the plumes that crowned his crest. Aeneas erupts in anger, stung by treachery now, and seeing Turnus' horses swing his chariot round and speed away. Over and over he calls out to Jove, to the altars built for the treaty now a shambles. Then, at last, he hurtles into the thick of battle as Mars drives him on, in terrible, savage, inciting slaughter, sparing none. He gives his rage free rein. Now what god can unfold for me so many terrors? Who can make a song of slaughter in all its forms, the deaths of captains down the entire field, dealt now by Turnus, now by Aeneas kill for kill? Did it please you so, great Jove, to see the world at war, the peoples clash that would later live in everlasting peace? Aeneas takes on Rutulian Sucro. Here was the first duel that ground the Trojan charge to a halt, and meets the man with no long visit, just a quick stab in his flank, and the ruthless sword blade splits the ribcage, thrusting into the heart, where death comes lightning fast. Turnus, hurling the brothers Amycus and Diores off their mounts, attacks them on foot, and one he strikes with a long spear, rushing at Turnus. One he runs through with a sword, and severing both their heads, he dangles them from his car as he carts them off in triumph, dripping blood. Aeneas packs them off to death, Talos, Tanais, staunch Cethegus, all three at a single charge. Then grim Oneites too, named for his Theban line, his mother called Peridia. Turnus kills the brothers fresh from Apollo's Lycian fields, and next Menoetes, who, in his youth, detested war, but war would be his fate. An Arcadian angler skilled at working the rivers of Lerna stocked with fish. His lodgings poor, a stranger to all the gifts of the great, and his father farmed his crops on rented land. Like fires loosed from adverse sides into woodlands dry as tinder, thickets of rustling laurel, or foaming rivers hurling down from a mountain ridge and roaring out to sea, each leaves a path of destruction in its wake. Just as furious now, those two, Aeneas, Turnus rampaging through the battle, now their fury boils over inside them. Now their warring hearts at the breaking point. They don't concede defeat. And now they hack their wounding ways with all their force. Here's Murrinus sounding off the names of his forebears and all his father's line from the start of time. His entire race come down from the Latin kings. Headlong down, Aeneas smashes the braggart with a rock, a whirling boulder's power that splays him on the ground, snarled in the reins and yoke as the wheels roll him on. And under their thundering hoofbeats, both his galloping horses, all thought of their master vanished, trample him to death. Here's Hylas, rushing in with his blood-curdling rage, but Turnus, rushing to block him, whips a spear at his brow that splits his gilded helmet, sticks erect in his brain. And your sword arm, Cretheus, bravest Greek of field, it could not snatch you from Turnus. Nor did the gods he worshipped save Capencus's life when Aeneas came his way. He thrust his chest at the blade, but his brazen shield, poor priest, could not put off his death. And Aeolus, too, you too, the Laurentine field saw you go down, and your body spread across the earth. Down you went, whom neither the Greek battalions could demolish, nor could Achilles, who raised the realms of Priam. Here was your finish line, the end of life. Your halls lie under Ida, high halls at Lyrnessus, but here in Laurentine soil lies your tomb. All on attack, the armies wheeling around for combat, all the Latins, all the Trojans, Mezentius, fierce Orestes, Messapus breaker of horses, brawny Asylas, the Etruscan squadron, Evander's Arcadian wings, each fighter at peak strength, all forced to put to the test as they soldier on. No rest, no let-up, total war. And now his lovely mother impelled Aeneas to storm the ramparts, hurl his troops at the city, fast frontal assault, and panic the Latins faced with swift collapse. And he, stalking Turnus through the moil of battle, Aeneas's glances roving left and right, sights the town untouched by this ruthless war, immune, at peace, and an instant vision of fiercer combat fires his soul. He summons Mezentius, Sergestus, staunch Serestus, chosen captains, takes his stand on a high rise where the rest of the Trojan fighters cluster round, tight ranks that don't throw down their shields and spears as Aeneas, rising amidst them, urges from the earthwork, "No delay in obeying my orders. Jove backs us now. No slowing down. I tell you, we must strike at once. That city, the cause of the war, the heart of Latinus' realm, unless they bow to the yoke, brought low this very day. I'll topple their smoking rooftops to the ground. What? Wait till Turnus deigns to take me on, consents to fight me again, defeated as he is? That city, my people, there's the core and crux of this accursed war. Quick, bring torches, restore our truce with fire." a call to arms, and they pack in wedge formation bent on battle, advancing toward the walls in a dense fighting mass. In a moment you see ladders slanted, brands aflame. Some charge at the gates and cut the sentries down, and others whirl their steel, blot out the sky with spears. Aeneas himself, up in the lead beneath the ramparts, raises his arm and thunders out, upbraiding Latinus, calling the gods. Bear witness, I've been dragged into battle once again. The Latins are our enemies twice over. This is the second pact they've shattered. And discord surges up in the panic-stricken citizens, some insisting the gates be flung wide to the Dardans. Yes, and they hail the king himself toward the walls. Others seize on weapons, rush to defend the ramparts. Picture a shepherd tracking bees to their rocky den. Closed up in the clefts, he fills with scorching smoke, and all inside, alarmed by the danger, swarming round through their stronghold walled with wax, hone sharp their rage to a piercing buzz, and the black reek goes churning through their house, and the rocks hum with a blind din, and the smoke spews out into thin air. Now a new misfortune assailed the battle-weary Latins, rocking their city to its roots with grief. The queen. When from her house she sees the enemy coming strong, walls assaulted, flames surging up to the roofs, and no Rutulian force in sight to block their way, no troops of Turnus. Then, poor woman, she thinks him killed in the press of war, and suddenly lost in the frenzied grip of sorrow, claims that she's the cause, the criminal, source of disaster. Shrilling wild words in her crazed, grieving fit, and bent on death, ripping her purple gown for a noose. She knots it high to a rafter, dies a gruesome death. As soon as the wretched Latin women hear the worst, the queen's daughter Lavinia is the first to tear her golden hair and score her lustrous cheeks. The rest of the women around her mad with grief, and the long halls resound with trilling wails of sorrow. From here the terrible news goes racing through the city. Spirits plunge. Latinus, rending his robes to tatters, stunned by his wife's death and his city's fall, fouls his white hair in showers of dust. Turnus, at this point, fighting off on the outskirts of the field, is hunting a few stragglers. Yet he's less avid now, exulting less and less when his horses win the day. But the winds bring him a hint of hidden terrors, mingling cries drifting out of the town in chaos. A muffled din. He cocks his ears, listening, hardly the sound of joy. What am I hearing? Why this enormous grief that rocks the walls, this clamor echoing from the city far away? So he wonders, madly tugging the reins back, and makes the chariot stop. But his sister, changed to look like his charioteer, Mezentius, handling the car and team and reins, she faced him with this challenge. This way, Turnus. We'll hunt these Trojans down where victory opens up the first way in. Other hands can defend our city walls. Aeneas hurtles down on the Latins, all-out assault, but we can deal out savage death to his Trojans. You'll return from the front no less than Aeneas in numbers, killed in battle, honors won. My sister, Turnus replies, I recognized you long ago, yes, when you first broke up our treaty with your wiles and threw yourself into combat. No hiding your godhood, you can't fool me now. But what Olympian wished it so? Who sent you down to bear such heavy labor? Why, to witness your luckless brother's painful death? What do I do now? What new twist of fortune can save me now? I've seen with my own eyes, calling out to me, Turnus, as he fell. Murinus, no one dearer to me survived, a great soldier taken down by a great wound. Unlucky Uphans died before he could see my shame, and the Trojans commandeered his corpse and weapons. Must I bear the sight of Latinus's houses razed? The last thing I needed, and not rebut the ugly slander of Drances with my sword? Shall I cut and run? Shall the country look on Turnus in full retreat? To die? Tell me, is that the worst we face? Be good to me now, you shades of the dead below, for the gods above have turned away their favors. Down to you I go, a spirit cleansed, utterly innocent as charged, forever worthy of my great fathers' fame. The words were still on his lips when, look, Sasses, riding his lathered horse through enemy lines, and slashed where an arrow raked his face, comes racing up, calling for help, crying the name of Turnus. Turnus, you are our last best hope. Pity your own people. Aeneas strikes like lightning. Up in arms he threatens to topple Italy's towers, bringing them down in ruins. Already the flaming brands go winging toward the roofs. The Latins, their eyes, their looks are trained on you. Latinus, the king himself, moans and groans with doubt. Whom to call his sons? Which pact can he embrace? And now the queen, whose trust lay all in you, she's dead by her own hand, terrified. She's fled the light of life. Alone before the gates, Mezentius and brave Aeneas hold our front lines steady, ringed by enemy squadrons packed tight, bristling a jagged crop of naked blades. While look at you, wheeling your chariot round the abandoned grassy fields. Stunned by pictures of these disasters blurring through his mind, Turnus stood there, staring, speechless, churning with mighty shame, with grief and madness all aswirl in that one fighting heart, with love spurred by rage and a sense of his own worth too. As soon as the shadows were dispersed and the light restored to his mind, he turned his fiery glance toward the ramparts, glaring back from his chariot to the town. But now, look, a whirlwind of fire goes rolling story to story, billowing up the sky and clings fast to a mobile tower, a defense he built himself of wedged, rough-hewn beams, fitting the wheels below it, gangways reared above. Now, my sister, the fates are in command. Don't hold me back. Where God and relentless fortune call us on, that's the way we go. I'm set on fighting Aeneas hand to hand, set, however bitter it is, to meet my death. You'll never see me disgraced again, no more. Insane as it is, I beg you, let me rage before I die. He leapt from his chariot, hit the ground at a run through enemies, Trojan spears, and left his sister grieving as he went bursting through the lines. Wild as a boulder plowing headlong down from a summit, torn out by the tempests, whether the storm winds washed it free or the creeping years stole under it, worked it loose, down the cliff it crashes, ruthless crag of rock, bounding over the ground with enormous impact, churning up in its onrush woods and herds and men. So Turnus bursts through the fractured ranks, charging toward the walls where the earth runs red with blood and the winds hiss with spears, and, hand flung up, he cries with a ringing voice. Hold back now, you Rutulians. Latins, keep your arms in check. Whatever fortune sends, it's mine. Better for me alone to redeem the pact for you and let my sword decide. All ranks scattered, leaving a no man's land between them both. But Aeneas, the great commander, hearing the name of Turnus, deserts the walls, deserts the citadel's heights, and breaks off all operations, jettisons all delay. He springs in joy, drums his shield, and it thunders terror. As massive as Athos, massive as Eryx, or even Father Apennine himself, roaring out with his glistening oaks, elated to raise his snow-capped brow to the winds. And then, for a fact, Rutulians, Trojans, all the Italians, those defending the high ramparts, those on attack, who batter the wall's foundation with their rams, all armies strained to turn their glances round and lifted their battle armor off their shoulders. Latinus himself is struck that these two giant men, sprung from opposing ends of the earth, have met, face to face, to let their swords decide. But they, as soon as the battlefield lay clear and level, charge at speed, rifling their spears at long range, then rush to battle with shields and clanging bronze. The earth groans as stroke after stroke they land with naked swords. Fortune and fortitude mix in one assault, charging like two hostile bulls fighting up on Sila's woods, or Tabernus's ridges, ramping in mortal combat, both brows bent for attack, and the herdsmen back away in fear, and the whole herd stands by, hushed, afraid, and the heifers wait and wonder, who will lord it over the forest, who will lead the herd, while the bulls battle it out, horns butting, locking, goring each other, necks and shoulders roped in blood, and the woods resound as they grunt and bellow out. So they charge, Trojan Aeneas and Turnus, son of Daunus. Shields clang and the huge din makes the heavens ring. Jove himself lifts up his scales balanced, trued, and in them he sets the opposing fates of both. Whom would win the labor of battle doom? Whose life would weigh him down to death? Suddenly Turnus flashes forward, certain he's in the clear, and raising his sword high, rearing to full stretch strikes. as Trojans and anxious Latins shout out, with the gaze of both armies riveted on the fighters. But his treacherous blade breaks off. It fails Turnus in mid-stroke. Enraged, as one recourse, retreat, and swifter than east winds, Turnus flies as soon as he sees that unfamiliar hilt in his hand. No defense at all. They say the captain, rushing headlong on to harness his team and board his car to begin the duel, left his father's sword behind and hastily grabbed his charioteer Metiscus's blade. Long as the Trojan stragglers took to their heels and ran, the weapon did its work. But once it came up against the immortal armor, forged by the god of fire, Vulcan, the mortal sword burst at a stroke, brittle as ice, and glinting splinters gleamed on the tawny sand. So raging Turnus runs for it, scours the field, now here, now there, weaving in tangled circles as Trojans crowd him hard, a dense ring of them shutting him in, with a wild swamp to the left and steep walls to the right. Nor does Aeneas flag, though slowed down by his wound, his knees unsteady, cutting his pace at times, but he's still in full fury, hot on his frantic quarry's tracks, stride for stride. Alert as a hunting hound that lights on a trapped stag, hemmed in by a river's bend, or frightened back by the ropes with blood-red feathers, the hound barking, closing, fast as the quarry, panicked by traps in the steep riverbanks, runs off and back in 1,000 ways, but the Umbrian hound, keen for the kill, hangs on the trail, his jaws agape. And now he's got him. Thinks he's got him. Yes, and his jaws clap shut, stymied, champing the empty air. Then the shouts break loose, and the banks and rapids round resound with a din, and the high sky thunders back. Turnus, even in flight, he rebukes his men as he races, calling each by name, demanding his old familiar sword. Aeneas, opposite, threatens death and doom at once to anyone in his way. He threatens his harried foes that he'll root their city out, and, wounded as he is, keeps closing for the kill. In 5 full circles they run and reel as many back, around and back, for it's no mean trophy they're sporting after now. They race for the life and the lifeblood of Turnus. By chance a wild olive, green with its bitter leaves, stood right there, sacred to Faunus, revered by men in the old days, sailors saved from shipwreck. On it they always fixed their gifts to the local god as they hung their votive clothes in thanks for rescue. But the Trojans, no exceptions, hallowed tree that it was, chopped down its trunk to clear the spot for combat. Now here the spear of Aeneas had stuck, borne home by its hurtling force, and the tough roots held it fast. He bent down over it, trying to wrench the iron loose, and track with the spear the kill he could not catch on foot. Turnus, truly beside himself with terror. "Faunus," he cried, "I beg you, pity me. You, dear earth, hold fast to that spear. If I have always kept your rights, a far cry from Aeneas' men who stain your rights with war." So he appealed, calling out for the gods' help, and not for nothing. Aeneas struggled long, wasting time on the tough stump. No power of his could loose the timber's stubborn bite. As he bravely heaves and hauls, the goddess Juturna, changing back again to the charioteer Metiscus, rushes in and returns her brother's sword to Turnus. But Venus, incensed that the nymph has had her brazen way, steps up and plucks Aeneas' spear from the clinging root. So standing tall, with their arms and fighting hearts refreshed, one who trusted all to his sword, the other looming fiercely with his spear, confronting each other, both men breathless, braced for the war god's fray. Now at the same moment Jove, the king of mighty Olympus, turns to Juno, gazing down on the war from her golden cloud, and says, "Where will it end, my queen? What is left at last? Aeneas the hero, god of the land, you know yourself. You confess you know that he is heaven-bound. His fate will raise Aeneas to the stars. What are you plotting? What hope can make you cling to the chilly clouds? So, was it right for a mortal hand to wound, to mortify a god? Right to restore that mislaid sword to Turnus? For without your power, what could Juturna do? And lend the defeated strength? Have done at last. Bow to my appeals. Don't let your corrosive grief devour you in silence, or let your dire concerns come pouring from your sweet lips and plaguing me forever. We have reached the limit. To harass the Trojans over land and sea, to ignite an unspeakable war, degrade a royal house and blend the wedding hymn with a dirge of grief. All that lay in your power. But go no further. I forbid you now. Jove said no more. And so, with head bent low, Saturn's daughter replied, Because I have known your will so well, great Jove, against my own I deserted Turnus and the earth. Or else you would never see me now alone on a windswept throne enduring right and wrong. No, wrapped in flames I would be up on the front lines, dragging the Trojan into mortal combat. Juturna? I was the one, I admit, who spurred her on to help her embattled brother true, and bless whatever greater daring it took to save his life, but never to shower arrows, never tense the bow. I swear by the unappeasable fountainhead of the Styx, the one dread oath decreed for the gods on high. So now I yield, Juno yields, and I leave this war I loathe. But this, and there is no law of fate to stop it now, this I beg for Latium, for the glory of your people. When soon they join in their happy wedding bonds, and wedded let them be, in pacts of peace at last, never command the Latins, here on native soil, to exchange their age-old name, to become Trojans, called the kin of Teucer, alter their language, change their style of dress. Let Latium endure. Let Alban kings hold sway for all time. Let Roman stock grow strong with Italian strength. Troy has fallen, and fallen let her stay with the very name of Troy. Smiling down, the creator of man and the wide world returned. Now there's my sister, Saturn's second child. Such tides of rage go churning through your heart. Come, relax your anger. It started all for nothing. I grant your wish. I surrender. Freely, gladly too. Latium's sons will retain their father's words and ways. Their name till now is the name that shall endure. Mingling in stock alone, the Trojans will subside. And I will add the rites and the forms of worship, and make them Latins all, who speak one Latin tongue. Mixed with Ausonian blood, one race will spring from them, and you will see them outstrip all men, outstrip all gods in reverence. No nation on earth will match the honors they showered down on you. Juno nodded assent to this, her spirit reversed to joy. She departs the sky and leaves her cloud behind. His task accomplished, the father turned his mind to another matter, set to dismiss Juturna from her brother's battles. They say there are twin curses called the Furies. Night had borne them once in the dead of darkness, one and the same spawn, and birthed infernal Megaera, wreathing all their heads with coiled serpents, fitting them out with wings that race the wind. They hover at Jove's throne, crouch at his gates to serve that savage king, and whet the fears of afflicted men whenever the king of gods lets loose horrific deaths and plagues or panics towns that deserve the scourge of war. Jove sped one of them down the sky, commanding, "Cross Juturna's path as a wicked omen." Down she swoops, hurled to earth by a whirlwind, swift as a darting arrow whipped from a bowstring through the clouds, a shaft armed by a Parthian, tipped with deadly poison, shot by a Parthian or a Cretan archer, well past any cure, hissing on unseen through the rushing dark. So raced this daughter of night and sped on earth. Soon as she spots the Trojan ranks and Turnus' lines, she quickly shrinks into that small bird that often, hunched at dusk on deserted tombs and rooftops, sings its ominous song in shadows late at night. Shrunken so, the demon flutters over and over again in Turnus' face, screeching, drumming his shield with its whirring wings. An eerie numbness unnerved him head to toe with dread. His hackles bristled in horror, voice choked in his throat. Recognizing the Fury's ruffling wings at a distance, wretched Juturna tears her hair, nails clawing her face, fists beating her breast, and cries to her brother, "How, Turnus, how can your sister help you now? What's left for me now, after all I've endured? What skill do I have to lengthen out your life? How can I fight against this dreadful omen? At last I leave the field of battle. Afraid as I am, now frighten me no more, you obscene birds of night. Too well I know the beat of your wings, the drum beat of doom. Nor do the proud commands of Jove escape me now, our great, warm-hearted Jove? Are these his wages for taking my virginity? Why did he grant me life eternal, rob me of our one privilege, death? Then, for a fact, I now could end this agony, keep my brother company down among the shades, doomed to live forever. Without you, my brother, what do I have still mine that's sweet to taste? If only the earth gaped deep enough to take me down, to plunge this goddess into the depths of hell. With that, shrouding her head with a gray-green veil and moaning low, down to her own stream's bed the goddess sank away. All hot pursuit, Aeneas brandishes high his spear, that tree of a spear, and shouts from a savage heart. More delay. Why now? Still in retreat? Turnus, why? This is no foot race. It's savagery, swordplay, cut and thrust. Change yourself into any shape you please. Call up whatever courage or skill you still have left. Pray to wing your way to the starry sky or bury yourself in the earth's deep pits. Turnus shakes his head. I don't fear you, you and your blazing threats, my fierce friend. It's the gods that frighten me. Jove, my immortal foe. No more words. Glancing around, he spots a huge rock, huge, ages old, and lying out in the field by chance, placed as a boundary stone to settle border wars. A dozen picked men could barely shoulder it up, men of such physique as the earth brings forth these days, but he wrenched it up, hands trembling, tried to heave it right at Aeneas. Turnus stretching to full height, the hero at speed, at peak strength. Yet he's losing touch with himself, racing, hoisting that massive rock in his hands and hurling, true, but his knees buckle. Blood's like ice in his veins, and the rock he flings through the air, plummeting under its own weight. Cannot cover the space between them, cannot strike full force. Just as in dreams when the nightly spell of sleep falls heavy on our eyes, and we seem entranced by longing to keep on racing on. No use. In the midst of one last burst of speed, we sink down, consumed. Our tongue won't work, and tried and true, the power that filled our body fails. We strain, but the voice and words won't follow. So with Turnus. Wherever he fought to force his way, no luck. The merciless fury blocks his efforts. A swirl of thoughts goes racing through his mind. He glances toward his own Rutulians and their town. He hangs back in dread. He quakes at death. It's here. Where can he run? How can he strike out at the enemy? Where's his chariot? His charioteer, his sister? Vanished. As he hangs back, the fatal spear of Aeneas streaks on, spotting a lucky opening he had flung from a distance, all his might and main. Rocks heaved by a catapult pounding city ramparts, never stormed so loudly, never such a shattering bolt of thunder crashing forth. Like a black whirlwind churning on, that spear flies on with its weight of iron death to pierce the breastplate's lower edge and the outmost rim of the round shield with its 7 plies, and right at the thick of Turnus's thigh it whizzes through. It strikes home, and the blow drops great Turnus down to the ground, battered down on his bent knees. The Rutulians spring up with a groan, and the hillsides round grown back, and the tall groves far and wide resound with a long-drawn moan. Turnus lowered his eyes and reached with his right hand and begged, a suppliant, I deserve it all. No mercy, please, Turnus pleaded. Seize your moment now, or if some care for a parent's grief can touch you still, I pray you had such a father in old Anchises, pity Daunus in his old age and send me back to my own people. Or if you would prefer, send them my dead body stripped of life. Here, the victor and vanquished, I stretch my hands to you, so the men of Latium have seen me in defeat. Lavinia is your bride. Go no further down the road of hatred. Aeneas, ferocious in armor, stood there still, shifting his gaze, and held his sword arm back, holding himself back too as Turnus's words began to sway with him more and more. When all at once he caught sight of the fateful sword belt of Pallas, swept over Turnus's shoulder, gleaming with shining studs, Aeneas knew by heart. Young Pallas, whom Turnus had overpowered, taken down with a wound, and now his shoulder flaunted his enemy's battle emblem like a trophy. Aeneas, soon as his eyes drank in that plunder, keepsake of his own savage grief. Flaring up in fury, terrible in his rage, he cries, decked in the spoils you stripped from one I loved, escape my clutches? Never. Pallas strikes this blow. Pallas sacrifices you now, makes you pay the price with your own guilty blood. In the same breath, blazing with wrath, he plants his iron sword, hilt deep in his enemy's heart. Turnus' limbs went limp in the chill of death. His life breath fled with a groan of outrage down to the shades below.